This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Studios at beautiful and serene Honolulu Plaza in Vancouver, British Columbia. Greg Phillips and Nick Duke are the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Yonder place to be nation, brace yourselves, for here come the charge of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Good Lord. This is what this is going to be for the next hour, I'm sure.
I am Greg Phillips the Handsome, and with me is Nick Duke the Hideous.
That's fine.
And we are Doth. In Jan Yartelheim, known over as the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. The fanboys who doth travel in a hard manner. Welcome to the L-shaped studio in noble Ho-Ho Loon Plaza. In beautiful, luxurious Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Good Lord, how long is this going to last?
Nick, how goes it?
Not so well the last 45 seconds or so, but up until that, it was going okay.
Do doth in-laws haunt thee to this day?
No, they do not, sir.
Then all is well.
It is.
We welcome you all to a Longbook hunt. Feels like it's been a while.
It has.
We've been safari here. And this latest edition of the Longbook Hunters, which of course, as everyone knows, is our monthly look at a trade paperback or graphic novel from the comic book world. And this month we bring you, long-awaited, our look at one of the most iconic and labyrinthine stories in Thor's history. As you know, Thor Ragnarok is still in theaters. I actually just saw it again the other day with my mother. She wanted to see it. We went out and watched it. She loved it. Said it's now her favorite Marvel movie, in fact. So with Thor still raking in money, still drawing acclaim in the theaters, we thought what better time than to look at a story about a character that's featured in the movie, and that character is Surtur. And so we are discussing the Surtur Saga, which came in the midst of the iconic tenure on Thor by writer and artist Walt Simonson. He's probably, other than Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the most famous of Thor's creators. He's the guy that is probably most associated with that character. Nick, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I've in recent years have been making my case loud and proud for Jason Aaron as the greatest of all Thor writers, but up until recent years, Walt Simonson was the undisputed king, and probably, amongst comic fans anyway, had even usurped Stan and Jack as the preeminent Thor creator throughout the character's history.
How responsible is Simonson for much of our modern Thor mythology, the sort of ideas and concepts that we associate with a modern Thor?
Well, it's tough to say because, I mean, the thing about a lot of Thor storytelling is it's a lot of it is cyclical, even more so than most comic storytelling, where you're kind of telling similar stories just with slight variations. And really, pretty much since Jack and Stan launched the title in the 60s, Thor went through about a 20-year period where it was kind of the same thing, just over and over again. And what Simonson was able to do was tell similar stories, but bring some added depth to them and some scope, and kind of put new spins on these old tools. And that was really the thing. I wouldn't say he's responsible for the existence of a lot of the aspects that we know, but he's probably responsible for the form they take, if that makes sense.
Now, he was sort of the guy that focused heavily on Asgard. Is that correct?
Yeah, Asgard and the cosmic stuff. I mean, as we'll discuss here, Earth was definitely a part of the story. Notably during the Frog Thor, or Throg, as some people like to call him, storyline, where that was set in Central Park. So you would get these little asides that took place on Earth, but pretty much everything that was driving the main thrust of the story forward was going to come from a cosmic or a Asgardian or Nine Realms perspective.
Gotcha. Now, as you guys will be able to tell as this broadcast goes on, Nick is the Thor guy. Nick is a Thor aficionado. He has, through various financially profitable manners, read the vast majority of appearances of Thor from the early 60s through, what, Nick, through early 2000s? 90s?
Pretty much from the character's inception up through the late 80s, and then picking up again with the mid 2000s to current, with a pretty sizable gap there during the 90s, which I have read some of, and yeah, not for me. Not for me is the way I would put it.
Eric Masterson!
Thunderstrike!
When you say it, you have to do it as Bill Walton. And I don't even know why, but it just works, doesn't it?
Throw it down, big man.
Throw it down, Eric Masterson!
Eric Masterson, my God.
It just works.
It doesn't work.
Eric Masterson is a legitimate name.
So is Sigurd Jarlson.
Sigurd Jarlson! Yes! We're going to get into Sigurd Jarlson. That's probably going to be about 70% of this podcast tonight. But
I bet you'd like to get into Sigurd Jarlson.
I would. Who wouldn't? Have you seen the guy, for God's sake? Ponytail, glasses.
Glasses, yeah. Good point.
T-shirt tucked into jeans.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't get a lot better than that. Now, this is where you come in, Nick. Because I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of heavy lifting here.
Oh, God.
Not unlike Norse power lifter Magnus Ver Magnusson.
Okay. I will do the best I can. So now granted, some of these concepts are even, are even a little out there for me. So I will do the best I can. What you got?
For those that are wondering, we are reviewing the Surtur Saga, as we mentioned. Right. What are the issue numbers on the Surtur Saga, Nick?
That's a good question, because I have always taken the Surtur Saga, to me personally, to be like the vast majority of like the first half of Simonson's run, which was something like 20 issues. But technically, I think what we counted it as for this exercise, Greg, was the first appearance of Surtur during Simonson's run up through his final appearance in Simonson's run. So technically that's going to run in Thor Volume 1 from issues 340 to 353.
Isn't it amazing, Nick, how back in the day people could pick up comics that were numbered in the 300s and nobody complained that it wasn't a number one?
It is amazing, and isn't it amazing how comics were even more financially successful back then than they are today, despite those practices? It really is something.
Interesting. So,
and in an era where comics were not very clearly written for the trade, as you could tell here when we read the story.
Yes,
it kind of picks up midstream and it kind of drops you off at the end of a story. And all of these issues kind of like they all string together, but for the most part they stand alone. And it's not. The collected edition was not even a thought at this point in time. And if it was, they were few and far between. So. Not a consideration for writers to write in neat little 5 and 6 issue chunks.
Exactly. Now, how long when did Simonson joins Thor? Around November, I believe, of 1983.
Yeah, issue 337. Yeah, he takes over there. So, pretty much right away, he introduces Beta Ray Bill, and that's kind of his first thing. And the deal is that Simonson apparently was a massive Thor fan when he was a kid, back in the 60s. and that actually while he was in college, he wrote fan fiction. Like, he wrote his own Thor stories, and basically, for the most part, I think he made some tweaks, some changes as he, grew as a writer, but for the most part, the bones of the story that he wrote when he was in college is what he used during his Thor run, and it wound up being, I think, 45 issues, somewhere in that neighborhood, 45 to 46 issues. So a very long run by early 1980s standards.
Yeah, 83 through 87, I think, or 88.
Right. Yes,
somewhere around there.
87. Yep.
And one of the things that we seem to come back to a lot on this show when we do Longbook hunts, we only do these books from this era maybe 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But every time we do, we come back to this sort of recurring theme of how there's this creative golden age of sorts going on. Not the golden age, which would be back in the 30s and 40s, but a creative golden age of the mid-80s,
right,
where you're getting this just wave of creativity across the comics medium, whether it be heady stuff like Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, or whether it be the month-to-month superhero theatrics of X-Men or Uncanny X-Men, New Teen Titans going on at this time.
Frank Miller's Daredevil would have been around.
Frank Miller's Daredevil's around the mid-80s, yep. And then you've got John Byrne's Superman reboot just around the corner. You've just got this whirlwind of creativity going on throughout the industry. A lot of cutting edge and boundary pushing things. And in the midst of it, you've got Walt Simonson's Thor, which almost in some ways bucks the trends of that time, because so many writers at this time are going for avant-garde, or going for pushing the boundaries and going to the very edge, and or they're going the opposite direction and they're going for heavy soap opera elements. Simonson almost takes what it seems to be, in my reading of this was my first exposure to Simonson's Thor, but it feels in many ways like a throwback. Mm-hmm. Like, he's embracing the out there kind of fantasy of the original Thor comics, right, and also adding in elements of actual Norse mythology, yes, and just embracing the weirdness.
He was also a massive Norse mythology aficionado, so he had a pre-existing love of Norse mythology before the Thor book was ever first hit the stands. And so when it hit the stands, he kind of like fell in love with it instantly, and it became his favorite book in comics. And so, Stan and Jack definitely, picked up aspects from Norse mythology and did their best pass on it, but Simonson kind of brought a deeper knowledge of the Norse mythological concepts to it, and kind of married those together with the 60s style storytelling to create something that was kind of unlike anything we had seen in comics in a long, long time. Really a fantasy story on the grandest of scales, and kind of what I am really talking about when I just describe my ideal Thor movie as being, a Marvel version of Lord of the Rings set in space. It's just... this is kind of the blueprint I wish the MCU would take when adapting the character.
Now, one thing that I will say is when you read an older comic from this era, this is right on the edge of the shift in comics in the mid-'80s, and it's loaded with thought bubbles. That's one thing that'll stand out if you're only familiar with reading modern comics. There's thought bubbles all over the place, lots of expository dialogue,
yes,
lots of things going on, so much stuff going on in every issue. It can take a long time to read a single issue, whereas today you might breeze through an issue in a half hour to an hour. It's almost like the opposite of The Walking Dead.
Right.
Where you finish a full trade volume in an hour of that. It takes time to get through these because there are so many characters and so many new concepts introduced and stories that get resolved within the span of 22 or 23 pages.
Right. And subsequent, stories running concurrently. I mean, in this volume alone, at one point, you've got Thor's story, you've got Loki's story, you've got Lorelei, you've got the character of Roger Willis, you've got Odin, and you've got Balder the Brave, all having concurrent stories at one point. So they're juggling 6 stories, and it's up to you, the reader, to really pay attention and actually read the dialogue very closely to understand what they're trying to get across to you in the course of each issue. I mean, it is not decompressed storytelling. It kind of is and it isn't, because they're telling so much in one issue, and then it plays across the entire run. But it is definitely, if Brian Michael Bendis wrote this, it would have been 50 issues instead of 13, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right. Exactly. There's just so much stuff happening. And also, the other thing that it may not be for everyone, the dialogue is extremely steeped in this sort of Shakespearean, this Norse Shakespearean passive tense verbiage. So a lot of the stuff that I was doing at the beginning of the show is kind of stuff that you'll see in this story. So if you're expecting very traditional dialogue, you're not going to see that here. You're going to have to sort your way through some oddly arranged sentences, but it's fun because it took me and put me in that world, and this is very much a fantasy comic. This is not trying to be realistic in any way. This is complete. Put yourself in this fantasy world and imagine that there's actually this world of ancient Asgardian warriors who talk like Hamlet,
Yes.
And often will refer to themselves in third person, which is always funny to me. Balder sitting there talking to Carnilla, and he's referring to himself as Balder, and it's just great. It's high drama, and it's great. It's corny, but it's the right kind of corny for comics, and it's just it's kind of the ideal of, like, to me, it's much easier to deal with than the same comics would have been 20 years earlier, because it feels like they're writing for a little bit higher audience, but not too high of an audience to where anyone can kind of pick it up and read it. Like, I don't think a kid would really have any trouble following what's going on here, but certainly as an adult, you can get a lot of subtext out of it. Certainly the Lorelei thought is interesting, and there's a lot to get out of that. But so that's kind of a prerequisite to know going in. But that being said, the world building here is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these, I can't even pronounce half of them, but all of these realms and all of these lands that you meet throughout the course of these issues, from the very first issue of the story, you're dropped into Beta Ray Bill fighting space demons that would eventually light away, so to speak, for Surtur. And I didn't know anything about Beta Ray Bill, really, except that I had his Marvel card back in the day. So,
you weren't a fan? You didn't know the name of his ship, Scuttlebutt?
Scuttlebutt. His ship is named Scuttlebutt. How do you not love that? I mean, you've got just even in the first few issues of this, which are really just laying the groundwork for the main 5-issue war with Surtur. You're getting all of this world building dropped on you, and characters I'd never heard of, and places I'd never heard of, and it's just dropping me in this and everything. And because I think he's drawing his own work, Simonson is penciling his own writing, and he knows exactly what he wants to show the audience and what he doesn't. And he lays out these panels so brilliantly that it creates forward momentum constantly. Like, there's never a dull moment in these books. It just keeps moving. And then there's also the rendering of these realms that all look so different from one another. Loki's castle in particular, when Balder goes there, is one of my favorite sequences in the story. It was so low-key. It was like, it almost looked like Castle Grayskull. Very, very cool there. So, Nick, the sheer amount of world building here, how much of that was a draw, and how much of that was a factor in making Thor what it was at the time?
Oh, I mean, definitely. It was. I mean, that's what draws me to Thor. I mean, kind of like the same thing as Green Lantern, Greg. You and I have discussed that we both love the DC universe, and I love the Marvel universe. But then you have, in Thor and Green Lantern, two characters who almost have entire universes onto themselves. I mean, with Green Lantern, you've got thousands upon thousands of lanterns and thousands of space sectors and so much scope to your storytelling. And Thor kind of has the same thing, because you've got not just the 9 realms, but throughout his history, Thor has also been used frequently as a cosmic character who can go out into some of the farthest reaches of the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe, to have encounters with, characters like Beta Ray Bill, characters like Ego has, predominantly featured in Thor comics in the past. So you've got just so many different things you can do with Thor, and yeah, this was a major part of the run at the time, and it's very telling that Simonson chose to kick off his run by introducing, such an out there concept as Beta Ray Bill, which is just to most people probably a goofy concept, but I got to say, I love the whole little Corbinite saga they do there with Beta Ray Bill, and big pop for Beta Ray Bill's street name, which is of course Simon Walterson.
Oh, that's great! I didn't even know that.
Yes.
So Beta Ray Bill is indeed an awesome character, and they do a lot to make you care about Bill and show you the respect that Thor and Odin have for Bill in this story. Lady Sif features heavily here as well, early on especially, and then again at the end.
And I misspoke, Greg. Simon Walterson is actually the name of Frog Thor, not.
Okay, yeah. Because I was going to say, I never knew Beta Ray Bill to have a civilian identity, but yeah, he was. You see his transformation, his origin story here, and that's pretty cool. But
what's really cool about that is they don't give it to you up front. Like, you're kind of shown this monstrous creature, and you kind of grow to, really care about him and become endeared to him, and then they hit you with the tragic backstory afterwards, which is kind of a cool approach to take. And it kind of, re-emphasizes why you should care about this character and makes you understand why Lady Sif, who up to that point had been a pretty integral part of the Thor mythos, was, beginning to have eyes for somebody other than Thor for the first time in quite some time.
Yes, and someone else that has eyes for Thor in this story is another character I'd never heard of before, Lorelei, who is the Enchantress's younger sister.
Yes.
And she makes a deal, Loki, to go and seduce Thor and make him her eternal love slave. But there's a lot of humor to be found in this story until Surtur arrives, and much of the humor to me derives from Lorelei constantly having to delay her plan.
Yeah.
She arrives pretty much in the first issue, and everything seems like it's ready to go, and she's trying to get Thor to drink this special magic potion that she's made. And unfortunately, she shows up, and she gets knocked unconscious and nearly killed by a dragon Fafnir, who turns on her. Then Thor keeps leaving her apartment early, or escaping just in the nick of time, or having some emergency call that prevents him from drinking her meat. It's almost like a recurring joke. And then at the end, she'll be like, "I'll get you next time, my pretty," stuff like that. And it compounds each issue, and each time I found myself laughing harder about how her continual plans seem to go awry. And even when she finally has some success with her plan, it's kind of the seeds are there for it to be foiled by a mortal. So there's a lot of good stuff here. What can you tell me about Lorelei, Nick? Is she a major character in the Thor mythos, or is this kind of her only real significant story?
I mean, they used her in the years after this, but if I'm not mistaken, I think she was actually a creation of Simonson, and perhaps she existed in actual Norse mythology. I'm not sure, but Simonson brought her in and kind of gave her the big push. And I had forgotten, Greg, until I just did a quick Google search. She was in season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, that's right. She was the opponent for Sif.
For Sif in the one crossover episode that Sif was on. So she has already been brought to life in film. So that's kind of cool. But no, to answer your question, a Simonson creation to the best of my knowledge, and played some role, but not. This is by far her most predominant usage, because a lot of people, I would assume anyway, find her and the Enchantress kind of derivative, pretty much the same type of character.
Right, the same powers, the same motivations, etc. Now, another character that I had never, ever, ever encountered in my reading of Marvel Comics, Balder the Brave.
Yes.
Who is Balder the Brave? Why have we not seen him in movies? What is the deal with Balder the Brave?
Okay, to answer your question, I don't know why we haven't seen him in the films, because that is to me the biggest missing element thus far from the Thor mythos. But basically this incarnation, Odin has 3 sons, all of different mothers. So you have Loki, who is technically an adopted son, and then you have Balder, who is, I'm trying to remember exactly who his mother is, and I am.
So real, he's Odin's son. I had no idea of that reading the story.
I'm looking it up. Yes. Balder the Brave is the... I'm looking... Frigga... Okay, here's where it gets a little confusing, because in the Marvel Comics, Freya and Frigga are 2 different characters. So Frigga is Balder's mother, whereas Freya is Thor's mother. But anyway, a lot of times in Thor comics, one of the most well-worn tropes at this point is the Odin sleep, or Odin being incapacitated at some point, and there being a power struggle for the throne between Loki and Thor and Balder. And throughout the years, it has kind of become apparent that whenever this happens, that more so than even Loki or Thor, Balder is the one who is truly best suited to sit upon the throne, because, you know, Loki obviously has his evil machinations and his single-mindedness of caring only for himself. And Thor, while often meaning to do well, still has an ego about him and has an obsession with Midgard that many of his, Asgardian compatriots do not share. And Balder is kind of, in terms of Asgard, as you guys often say about Captain America or Superman, he's just kind of the best person. Like, he typically is selfless and fearless, and kind of the guy you can always count on to do the right thing. And interestingly, that has led to him kind of catching the eye of both Hela and Karnilla, Karnilla is kind of the ultimate tweener in the Thor universe, just the Queen of the Norns, who's kind of there as an impartial observer and doesn't really care for, what befalls of Asgard, be it good or ill. But yeah, so that's kind of Balder. He typically finds himself off on long journeys where he feels,
He's the Thea Queen of Asgard?
Something like that, because he often, in the comics, has been portrayed as somebody who, because he's always the best person and always so selfless, at times he feels like he's being taken advantage of, and at times he feels like, despite everything he does for Asgard and everything he does for his family, that Thor is always the preferred son. And whenever he starts to feel that jealousy, he'll often just remove himself from the situation to kind of, get his head straight and then come back when the time is right.
Interesting. Yeah, I had never encountered him before, and I was shocked at how much time he got here, because I kept thinking to myself, well, what's the point of this guy? What are his powers, Nick? I couldn't get a good grip of that. It just seems like he's I thought he was a normal human warrior for the longest time.
No, I mean, I wouldn't really say powers. I mean, most Asgardians don't really have powers, so to speak. They're just kind of, immortal warriors.
But he is technically a god, right? You'd think he'd be the god of something.
Yes, but, I mean, technically, if you're looking at the Asgardians, so are the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif. I mean, I would, if you're looking at power set, and if you're trying to compare his strength, he's probably somewhere more around that realm than being a Thor or a Loki. Although, apparently, his Wikipedia page now says he has light manipulation abilities, which is the first time I've heard of that. So, yeah. So I'm reading.
And he's fat.
He is a little chunky, and that's one of those things that's kind of been inconsistent. Whereas Volstagg pretty much all the time has been, a massive dude, and that's one criticism of this story I have to have. Not enough Volstagg in it. Whereas Balder is kind of fluctuated between, a little thicker and a little skinnier, depending on who is drawing him.
You are. Here is a comment that one character, and I can't remember his name, the character who is following, he's initially following Balder to try and assassinate him. but eventually becomes won over by Baldur's feats of daring and ends up looking up to him and wanting to meet him. And I can't remember what this character's name is, but here is a thought that he has while he's watching him. I cannot believe it. Baldur seeks death in the endless desert, and happily would I slay him. But I could not catch him. Who would have thought that one so fat could move so quickly?
Yeah, so this particular journey of self-discovery, if I'm remembering correctly, at one point, Baldur, being one of Asgard's finest warriors, kind of grew tired of all the killing. He had slain, hundreds of thousands over the course of his life. And at one point, I believe he wound up going to, he actually was forced to go to hell for some reason. I can't remember what it was. And while there, in order to win his freedom, Hela forced him to basically slay every demon he had ever killed. He had to slay that person again to get out of hell. And so that experience just kind of broke him for a little while and made him, want to put down his sword and leave Asgard for good. And also, one aspect that I neglected to mention here is that in the Norse mythological version, and I think in a couple of different comics iterations of Ragnarok, I'm not sure about all of them, Baldur's death is actually the final foretelling of Ragnarok. There are different things, like the Twilight Sword being drawn and the eternal flame lighting the Twilight Sword, but Baldur's death is the thing that is supposed to herald the imminent arrival of Ragnarok, which has led to some confrontations between he and Odin, because it leads his father to take on something of an overprotective bend towards him at times, wanting to keep him out of harm's way because he's afraid that if he gets hurt, it could bring about the end of all things.
Now, I have a question about Baldur.
Yes.
At any point in his life, did he accidentally kill the daughter of an old gypsy who then runs his hand across his face and curses him, Baldur?
Oh, I thought you were going to say fatter. But
no, Baldur.
No, but his experiences in hell did turn his hair white, so there is that.
Now, did it turn his hair white, or did it turn his hair
white?
White.
Hard to say, really.
Now, if Baldur the Brave isn't the bravest warrior in Asgard, I will smear doo-doo over everything in this studio.
Oh, God.
But I digress. So, you mentioned the character of Volstagg. Now,
yes.
While it's true that he is not here enough in the Surtur Saga, he makes his appearances count. And I have screenshotted a few of my favorite panels. I read this story on the wonderful Marvel Unlimited. Marvel Unlimited, the best value in digital comics.
The Webby Award-winning Marvel Unlimited.
Absolutely. Check should be in the mail. And here are a couple of choice scenes involving Volstagg that truly stood out to me. So they're in the midst of this battle against the hordes of Surtur, the fire demon. And, what's his name? What's the handsome one's name? Fandral?
Fandral, yes.
Fandral says, "Come on, Volstagg. Hogan, Sif, and I shall have destroyed all our foes ere you cross the frozen river." And then Volstagg says, no horse is equal to the task of carrying my heroic girth, Fandral.
You like that, do you?
Yes. And then here's another good one here. He is comforting the character of Beta Ray Bill and actually trying to confront him as Bill is wanting to take off and protect the Lady Sif and abandon his duty as the leader of the army. And Volstagg says, "Hold still! Must I sit on you to make you hear me?" Tremendous. Just a great character. A great character that provides much humor to the Thor universe, at least in this story. And in addition to this, there's also some other humor to be found in the goings-on in Midgard that are leading into Surtur's attack. Because, as we referenced earlier, Thor, one of the first things, actually, that Walter Simonson does in his run is do away with the, quite frankly, incredibly confusing to me concept of Donald Blake.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't know, for those who are used to a modern Thor, the movie Thor, Donald Blake was the civilian identity of Thor, and by striking his hammer, he could, on the ground, he could turn himself into the mortal Donald Blake and or take the place of an existing mortal named Donald Blake. I'm not entirely sure. Nick?
Okay, so the story as it goes is that in the original Journey into Mystery comics, the handicapped doctor, Donald Blake, he was a man who could not walk without the assistance of a cane, was on a vacation somewhere, and stumbled into this cave where he found an enchanted cane, and then but when he tapped that cane on the ground, he found himself transformed into the mighty Thor. I believe it was retconned at one point to explain that Odin had forbidden Thor from returning to Midgard because of his obsession with the people there, and that it was not until he was able to find a mortal host to allow him to move over that Thor could return. And so Donald Blake was Thor's proxy, I suppose you could say. But Donald Blake was a person before Thor existed, and then that was later. It's been retconned so many times at this point that.
So what happens to regular Donald Blake when Thor inhabits his body?
Donald Blake transforms into Thor, and Thor transforms into Donald Blake, but then Thor's spirit goes back to it's best we not think about these things.
And I've gone cross-eyed.
Exactly.
But nevertheless, Donald Blake's done. Simonson
yes.
does away with Donald Blake, but yet Thor, when he returns to Earth, decides that he still wants to have a relationship with the people of Earth, and so he feels like he needs a civilian identity, and he adopts the identity thanks to his friend Nicholas Fury, who in this talks like some hybrid of Wolverine and a 1930s paperboy. Who helps him.
That's pretty consistent for like 60s through 80s Nick Fury, by the way.
True, and I would argue still should be. That's right. I want Sam Jackson to talk like this.
Well, no. In the Marvel comics now, Sam Jackson is Nick Fury Jr. Not
Junior. That's fair. So Nick Fury helps him get a new identity and an apartment building under the name, the nom de jour, Sigurd Jarlson, or perhaps Sigurd Jarlson, because it may be a silent J, I don't know. But in any event, Sigurd Jarlson is basically, he looks exactly like Thor, except he wears a white t-shirt tucked into jeans, 80s jeans, of course, because it's the early 80s, and has his hair pulled back into what I can best describe as a Terry Taylor ponytail.
Oh, come on now. Don't sully the good name of Sigurd Jarlson by comparing him to Terry Taylor.
Okay, let me think of another good blonde ponytail to compare it to. A Lenny Lane ponytail. and he wears a pair of spectacles, which leads to one of the coolest parts and unexpected parts of the entire 13-issue story.
Yes.
And that is one that would never in a million years happen today, Nick.
No.
Go ahead and explain.
No, you go ahead. This is your. I knew this was going to get you whenever you saw it. So.
Well, I didn't expect it at all. It's so random. It's like a random. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just a random kind of Easter egg, like a nod, but more than an Easter egg. It's not just a thing in the background. It's actually a thing where they exchange dialogue. You get, as Jarlson is handed a pair of spectacles, he's not really sure about it. And Nick said, hey, it worked for that other guy, and we got a bunch of news reporters out in the hall anyway. We're waiting on something. I don't even remember why they were there. So Thor goes to open the door to leave and knocks over an individual wearing glasses and a suit and standing in front of a woman. And they look very familiar. And that's because the person that he bumps into is Clark Kent, who is there with Lois Lane of the Daily Planet. Although the Daily Planet isn't named and they're not called Clark Kent and Lois Lane, they refer to each other as Clark and Lois. So it's obvious who they are, and he looks just like Superman. And so Jarlson bends down to help Clark up to his feet, and you actually get a little bit of dialogue between Clark and Thor, and it has to have been the first encounter ever of Superman and Thor to that point. Very cool, very bizarre, would never happen today, but I loved the hell out of it, man. It was so unexpected to see Lois and Clark in a Marvel comic, and this kind of thing happened more in those days where the trademark rules were a little bit more relaxed, and the companies, it feels like, had a little better working relationship with each other anyway. But very cool, Nick.
Yeah, it is very cool. But like you said, something that just would never happen today. And it's kind of cool, knowing the future of what would become for Walt Simonson, being married to Louise, and the massive role she would play in shaping Superman's future. So just kind of a cool intersection in comics history there.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned the ties to Superman, because there's another tie to Superman here. Walter Simonson, as you mentioned, married Louise Simonson. They are one of the foremost married couples in comics, if not the. And she would go on, and he would contribute as well to writing and some of the most iconic Superman stories, including a major contributor in the era of the death of Superman.
Right.
And one of the aspects of the death of Superman that I remember from when I was a kid was the build up to Doomsday.
Yes.
In seemingly unrelated issues, where you would see at the end of each issue this plotting kind of noise that was being made against this vault at the beneath the earth, and it was going doom, 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 and as the issues went on, it finally ends with crack a doom as he breaks out. Well, that I had no idea, but that had already been done.
Yes.
In the Surtur Saga, because that's how we're introduced to Surtur, is this mysterious fire creature is hammering a sword on an anvil, and each time he strikes it, it makes the noise doom, and you just see these doom messages, and the dooms get bigger and bigger and bigger as the issues progress, and leads to the arrival of Surtur, who isn't really anything like Doomsday as a character, but the build up to it was similar, and the sense of dread was similar, because it makes you feel like anything that's happening right now in this issue is ultimately irrelevant, because shit's about to get real, for lack of a better term.
And that dynamic that you just mentioned about, it making you feel like what's going on isn't important because things are about to be taken to another level. It really works because, for the most part, the early issues where we first see the teases of Surtur are relatively lighthearted. I mean, you have some stakes there with the Beta Ray Bill stuff, but then we go back to Earth for a little bit, and those are the stories with like the old Viking man and Fafnir the dragon and stuff, which are cool and fun, but like not really overly serious. And then you would have these fun little stories, but towards the end it would be like, all right, that was fun and everything, but you need to be prepared because doom is on the horizon, essentially.
Fafnir was apparently, reading between the lines, because they don't actually give an issue number to refer back to, Fafnir must have been one of the earliest foes of Thor, I'm assuming. He was
an early foe of Thor, and had played a recurring role throughout the years, and I believe had just popped up in the year or two that immediately preceded Simonson taking over the book. And so Simonson was trying to make it feel like a direct continuation of the title, of the book that had the creative team that had immediately preceded him.
Yeah, and I have to say, if there's a down part of this book, it's probably that little run there of issues where Thor is back on. It's very similar to the movies, where Thor is on Earth, and it kind of, there's constant momentum. Stuff is constantly happening, but not all of it is terribly interesting. Like the old Viking man was not terribly interesting to me.
I will agree with that, but the thing about
although his subplot was told well.
Yeah, his subplot was told well, but the thing about that is, unlike the movies, while the Thor aspects of being on Earth aren't as interesting, because like we mentioned earlier, these books have so many different subplots going on that whenever you do go back to, I think one of my favorite subplots after doing this reread was, it's right after the Beta Ray Bill stuff, and it's like Odin has seen the demons that were chasing Bill's people across the cosmos, and it's like, before anybody else knows something is really wrong, Odin knows, and so you get to see him almost like playing the role of investigator, like sending his ravens out and like going to Valhalla to check the table to make sure.
Great Odin's raven.
Yeah, to make sure that there's still an unoccupied seat there, and so you get to see Odin playing like a little bit of Asgardian detective, which is cool. So, you know, you've either got the Odin stuff or the Baldur stuff moving, you know, the Asgardian part of the story forward. So even though the Thor aspects kind of suffered at times, the stories as a whole was still always moving forward in an interesting fashion somewhere.
As a rule, anything in this book, in this story that takes place on Asgard is great. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was the Baldur the Brave, who I'd never heard of before. I was more interested in what he was doing. I found myself really examining his story of this broken man who just wants to die, who just wants to go off and die again and allow himself to be thrown back into hell because of the actions that he's taken, including a particularly tragic and yet funny scene involving him and Loki that I literally laughed out loud. I saw how Loki resolved it at the end and how he had tricked him. Just awesome. I can't say enough about it. Great art, great plotting there. And so Baldur, you know, I actually ended up really identifying with him as the story progressed and had a rooting interest in seeing him come back to the other side and return to Asgard in a heroic moment to help out. And as for Thor, while Sigurd Jarlsson's journey is going on, he's also going on these cool little action adventure kind of things as well, and also trying inadvertently putting off the advances of Lorelei as she's trying to get him. So there is plenty of interesting stuff going on, But what really wins this over as a classic story is that last 4 to 5 issues, when Malekith the Accursed shows up and opens up the port. Which tell me about this Roger Willis character. Was this a new creation of Simonson?
I believe so. Yeah. So Roger Willis. The concept is that, you know, the Cask of Ancient Winters is one of the lost Asgardian artifacts. It actually was used in the first Thor movie. If you remember the Frost Giants, the item that they were trying to get to restore themselves to power. Anyway, it was hidden away on Earth and entrusted to a line of mortals, because it was thought that mortals would be the least likely place that anyone would ever think to look. And so the gimmick is that whoever the protector of the cask is granted an unnaturally long life. So in this book, we see Malekith come to Earth and start to search for the cask and calling the wild hunt of the Dark Elves and of the fairy realm of Svartalheim, which we see at one point, which is kind of cool seeing the wild hunt on page. But the character of Roger Willis. Wait a minute, I'm going to get him backwards. Eric Willis. Which one?
Eric is the father.
But he's actually younger than his son, which is odd. But that's because the cask, his guardianship of the cask, has granted him unnaturally long life, and only when he is slain by Malekith does he, feel forced to pass this responsibility on to his father, who is actually an old man. So you have like this grizzled old war vet who is
a grizzled young vet.
He's a grizzled
young vet.
He's a grizzled young vet. Oh yes, I like that.
He's worked so many realms that sometimes he forgets.
Yes, that's good. But yeah, so basically you have this character who was an original invention of Simonson, who plays the role of kind of the designated mortal in the giant conflict that is to come. While the Asgardians are battling Surtur on Asgard, he is on Earth trying to right the wrongs that Malekith had set forth and remove the Earth from its state of eternal winter that it had fallen into. So cool little concept here of like this old man being forced to take up the legacy of his father, which is something you don't really see.
Oh yes, and the actual Eric Willis issue in which he meets his fate is one of my favorites of the whole story. In fact, I thought it was great because I was guessing the whole time as to what was going on. They brilliantly Simonson brilliantly. I say they. It's his story. Yes. He starts the issue by basically making it look like Eric Willis is a psychopath.
Yes.
They make it look like he's kidnapped this young woman and killed her in some way and is very nonchalant about it. But as the issue progresses, you find out things are not what they appear to be, and nothing is exactly what it has seemed to be. I thought that was just a brilliantly done issue, a brilliantly done mystery. And then when Surtur finally arrives, I mean, it is epic. It is just as epic as what we got in the movie Ragnarok with the big fight at the end of when they're fighting the hordes of Hela, you know? That's how it felt to me, because you've got the heroes and the villains of Asgard working together alongside the heroes of Earth, the Mighty Avengers, and the Fantastic Four to fend off a seemingly unstoppable foe. And to see, and everybody kind of gets a moment in this. Everybody gets moments to shine, whether it's Reed Richards using his brain, Johnny Storm flying Roger over across the sea to try to recreate the cask. Whether it's, the Scarlet Witch and the Wasp and what is that character called? I had never heard of this character. I'd heard of him, but I'd never seen him before. Had a god-awful costume. One of the Avengers at the time. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Sun something.
Sun? I don't know.
Anyway, he shows up and has a really awful early 80s costume. And
Sunshade? No. Sunspot?
No. Wait. I'm fixing to tell you right now because I'm going to pull it up right here on Marvel Unlimited as we talk on this podcast. But anyway, you get these awesome shots of the Avengers doing stuff, Fantastic Four doing stuff. You get Sif and Beta Ray Bill who come back. It's really this all hands on deck kind of war. And then it comes down, of course, to Odin versus Surtur. Along with the help of Thor helping his father out, but then it all culminates in the best issue of the entire run, which is the last issue, the culmination of this battle, and that is when you get the shocking reappearance of Loki,
who has one of the best lines in the entire run. In the entire issues, when they're getting ready to charge into battle, and Odin screams for Asgard, Thor screams for Midgard, and Loki screams for myself.
For myself.
We need a Loki. We need a Silver / Bronze Age Loki Larfleeze crossover is what we need.
Oh, tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Loki is awesome here. And I got to be honest, I didn't see it coming. I didn't think he would show up to help because they had established earlier on that he had agreed to stay out of the conflict. And instead, he does indeed show up. And I marked out. I got to be honest. It was a huge, cheering moment for me, where I was like, I didn't see it coming, and it's kind of like what you get in the movies we talked about when Loki shows up. It's like, I really want to root for him. I want to believe that he's going to do the right thing, even though I didn't expect it. And so he does indeed show up, helps out, and you get this great issue-long battle where Thor, Loki, and Odin finally join forces to try to take down Surtur, and the odds at times feel insurmountable, and I had no idea how this ended. So for me, this was an exciting read because I was expecting Ragnarok. Honestly, I thought this was Ragnarok, and so I was expecting the heroes all to get wiped out. And so to see Odin kind of sacrifice himself at the end, and to see the genuine concern on the faces of Loki and Thor as he sacrifices himself was really, really cool. And so the emotional journey, the roller coaster ride that it takes you on throughout. And I'm not going to spoil how everything goes down, but there's a lot of twists and turns, and just when you think it's over, it keeps going, and it really blew me away, man. It's such great storytelling in a compressed manner, where you've got to fit so many subplots into one issue each time out, and yet Simonson still managed to dangle enough morsels to build up the anticipation for what we got.
Yeah, absolutely. He was dynamic because they had done Ragnarok, I think, twice already at that point in the Thor mythos, and Surtur had played a major role. And so I think Simonson was attempting to subvert expectations here a little bit by, having it go a different direction and having Odin have to make a grander sacrifice than we had seen in a while. And that's one thing that Simonson should probably be noted for, is Simonson was responsible for softening and humanizing to a degree the character of Odin, where he's still very pompous and still, kind of thinks that his way is best. But that early Odin from Stan and Jack is really a dick, like just kind of one of the worst dads in comics, really. And, Simonson was responsible for kind of having a more familial relationship between Odin and his sons than we had come to expect.
Here, the only time that we really get Dick Odin is when he finds out that Lorelei has been deceiving Thor.
Yes.
And instead of telling Thor about it, he says, "Ha ha, a most wonderful jest." And then he says, "At least he's not in love with the mortal. I'll let it be." Basically pulling a Mills Lane, saying, "I'll allow it."
I'll allow it, yes. Good stuff.
Oh, by the way, the Avenger I was thinking of is Star Fox, who I honestly don't have any idea who Star Fox is because I never read Avengers comics, but he looks incredibly stupid. He's got a disco collar. He's got Namor hair. And then possibly even worse than his costume, though, is the costume at the time of Captain Marvel, who I believe must have been Monica Rambeau at this time. And she is in an all-yellow outfit that just looks awful. No knock on Walt Simonson, of course, because this was the hand he was dealt, but my God. Anyhow, luckily you've got Scarlet Witch with her completely sensible costume with the M helmet to show up and look good, and the Wasp is there too, and she's cool. But anyway, yeah. So just great stuff going on, and one thing that I definitely wanted to touch on is the art. Mm-hmm. The inks, the art on this is mostly all Simonson. In most of these issues, he is penciling and inking himself. But on a few of these issues, because of the sheer madness of doing all of this every single month, in addition to whatever else he was working on at the time, he had to have some other people come in and do inks. And you get the Terry Austin for the most part. There's a couple of other inkers thrown in here or there throughout this series, but this book. But for the most part, it's Terry Austin if it's not Walt. And while Terry Austin is considered one of the great inkers of all time in comics, who's inked so many of the greats, especially on X-Men with John Byrne, here I find the art is actually at its best when it's just Walt Simonson.
Yes, I would agree.
Walt inking himself, I feel like when Austin is inking it, it almost looks a little bit too much like Kirby, which is not a bad thing, but it's not distinct. When Walt is inking himself, it looks like nobody else draws, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. It's that's kind of the Walt images are kind of what I remember the most from this title, and you're right. There are issues in this 14 issue run where you can definitely tell there's a shift, and it does lead to a little bit of artistic inconsistency, but luckily for the most part, more often than not, Walt is doing his own inking. So,
and it feels the art is so good here that it almost feels that the art itself could stand alone with no dialogue at times. Like it progresses the story, the facial expressions, the lines and faces of people, particularly when he gets a little gritty at times, like when he wants to draw the kind of wear and tear on the face of Roger, who's an old war veteran, or when he's drawing the fatigue on Balder, who's been wandering through the desert for so long. It's just outstanding art from beginning to end, and it's a kind of style of art that is unlike much of what's being drawn today. I mean, probably I'm trying to think of a close comparison of modern artists to this style, and I would say probably something like who was the guy that drew Hawkeye? David Aja, maybe somebody like that has a similar style, or Chris Samney maybe has a similar style to Walt, but it's very unique and it's iconic. I mean, this is for most people who have encountered Thor in the comics, this is the artwork they think of. And while, you know, Nick and I both share a love of what's his name? Todd Ribbich, and his painted Thor artwork. This is certainly what you think of, what most people think of when they think of Thor is these Walt Simonson images, maybe alongside Jack Kirby, but that's mainly, I think, for Thor himself. When you think of Thor's supporting cast, most people think of Walt. And it really comes across here. All the characters are interestingly designed and consistently designed. You don't see any of the kind of screw-ups that you get a lot of times, even in older comics, where people, you know, so in one issue, Odin's costume is this, and in the next issue he's wearing something completely different from what we saw him in the previous issue, even though it's the same time period. So very consistent art throughout the story. In turn, like you said, there's a little bit of inconsistency with the inking, and so it looks a little different at times. But for the most part, the art is very consistent, and the tone is very consistent throughout.
Yeah, I completely agree. Simonson, you know, I think it helps that he was a massive fan of the character and of the mythology, because he definitely knew the story he wanted to tell and told it expertly.
So why do you think it is, Nick, that this story in particular gets brought up so much among Thor fans? What was it that made this one so iconic compared to what had come before?
I think it's the layered nature of Simonson's entire run, like we talked about, where he's got 4 or 5 plot threads all kind of running simultaneously. And really, you know, it's a Thor title, and Thor is always the main character, so to speak, but he did more for Thor's supporting cast, I would argue, than just about anybody else. Whether it was introducing Beta Ray Bill, whether it was kind of finally separating Lady Sif from Thor. Granted, at the time, it was still for another, you know, love story subplot, but at least it separated her from Thor and kind of enabled her to stand alone as a character. Like you said, the Balder stuff, just all the side pieces that Simonson was able to enhance and add to the Thor mythos. I think that's really it. And, you know, whereas we had definitely seen Surtur before and seen Surtur make a giant impact, we had not seen a build like this. You know, he took his time. I mean, he took the better part of a year slowly teasing this giant confrontation, and then getting to see, like you said, the self-sacrifice of Odin. It kind of cemented the fact that Simonson had redefined that character, and he had just kind of taken the entire Thor mythos and had been able to provide us with something that was both familiar and yet new at the same time, and that's kind of the hallmark of it.
Tremendous. Well stated. The interesting thing, you mentioned that Surtur had appeared before. He first appeared in Journey into Mystery number 97, October of 1963, based on the fire giant Surtur from Norse mythology, and was described at that time as one of the 10 most heinous enemies of the mighty Thor, which sounds like a Stan Lee line.
Yes.
So put it into context, Surtur versus the other villains of Thor. Where does he rank among the pantheon of people like Loki and Ymir the Frost Giant, Malekith the Accursed, Enchantress, etc.?
It's difficult to kind of rank him, because really, while the characters are very different, Greg, I think the closest analogy that I would use is kind of Doomsday as a Superman. Not necessarily a villain that is going to challenge Thor on an emotional or personal level, but one that when he appears, you know that, you know, Thor is in a level of danger, and, you know, Asgard is in peril in ways that none of these other villains can really challenge him. Thor is a character who is defined almost, you know, implicitly by his strength. And this is the rare villain that can physically match him blow for blow and often overpower him. So whenever Surtur or the unfortunately named Mangog show up, those are often the two that you know some shit's about to go down, and Surtur has always been my favorite of the two, just because of his ties to Ragnarok and all the build that often goes around him. Loki obviously still probably the predominant Thor villain. Malekith right there behind him. But I would say, for me personally, it's Loki and then probably Surtur would be my second favorite Thor villain, even ahead of Malekith.
Very cool, very cool. Yes, I had to say, that thing is, I remain underwhelmed by Malekith. He wasn't good in the movie, obviously, but I wasn't really impressed with him here either.
Yeah, this is not the best indicate. Like, this is Simonson using Malekith as a means to an end to advance the Surtur story. He actually gets a lot more play in the run, I think, later on, and he's better. And then Jason Aaron's Malekith stories have been just phenomenal to this point. So, yeah.
Well, with all that being said, I think it's pretty obvious from the way we've talked about this one. This is getting a recommendation from us. If you've watched the Thor movies, if you've enjoyed them, or the Avengers movies even, you like Thor in them, I think this is a good place to really, if you want to do a deep dive into the Thor mythos, this is a pretty good place to go. I think you're gonna get introduced to a lot of concepts. You're gonna get introduced to a lot of aspects, some comedy, some serious stuff, some Shakespearean family drama. But I really feel like this is a pretty good story to check out. And if you're a big comics fan, I think you should especially check it out if you have any love and appreciation of that era of comics. Mm-hmm. Because what you'll find, I think, is a story that may, for modern readers, if you're only familiar with modern comics, it may be difficult to adjust to at first. But I think for a lot of people, it will remind you of a different style of storytelling and how it can work, and how powerful an extended run on a character can be instead of a short, hit it and quit it on a title. Simonson had a long time to build his story, and you see here the benefits of that approach, even within an environment where you're telling standalone stories as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't end here. I mean, that's the great thing about this run. If you read this and you like it, I mean, Simonson's run, like I said, I think it runs from 337 to 382, I believe, something like that. So, I mean, you've got like 45 issues of Simonson there, and it's all different, and it's all out there, and it's a lot of fun to read. So for anybody who enjoys this, I mean, that's where you can just continue on for another almost 30 issues. So I give the Simonson run the highest of recommendations.
Is this your favorite story in the Simonson run?
I think so, although Frog Thor is something that has to be seen to be believed to see how well such an inherently goofy concept works. But yes, probably. Also,
highest praise I can give this story, it uses Mr. Fantastic, and I don't hate him.
You have a long-time beef with Reed Richards.
I do, him and his propeller arms.
Propeller arms.
Yes. Anyway, what do you think of the Surtur Saga? What do you think of Walter Simonson's Thor? Let us know. Contact us through Twitter. I'm at gphillips8652. He's at nickduke87. You can email us, Greg P. at placetobenation.com, Nick D. at placetobenation.com. Join the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page. You can just type in Place to Be Nation Comics on Facebook. Join the group. I don't even know why it makes people ask to join, because it's a public group, but nevertheless, we'll let you in for sure. Join the conversation. We talk about comics there. Drop hot takes, cold takes, every kind of take you can possibly have. We're debating starting a Feinbaum film room for comics. So that should be fun if we get around to it. So anyway, let us know what you think about the show. Let us know what you think about the Surtur. Do you have any other Thor recommendations that you'd like us to review? Thor stories that may be under the radar. Perhaps something from the 90s run that Nick is less familiar with. Let us know if there's a story out there that you'd like us to review. We'll get on it as quickly and as efficiently as we can. Thanks in large part to the wonderful Marvel Unlimited app. Nick, Marvel Unlimited, I mean, what a great service, and what a great opportunity for all of our listeners if they'd like to subscribe to that service for a relatively low price. It's the best value in comics, is it not?
It really is. I mean, $9.99 a month if you want to go monthly, or I believe you can get an annual membership for $70 in it for a year, which comes out to what's the math on that, Greg? Like less than $6 a month, is that right? Yeah. So I mean, for thousands upon thousands of Marvel comics, hard to beat, man. I mean, got most of the entire histories of characters like Spider-Man, Thor, Captain America. I think all of those solo titles are now up on there. Got most of the X-Men history. I mean, just so much stuff you can get off of there, and they have new titles are added 6 months after release. So if you're somebody who doesn't mind waiting, or you're a trade waiter anyway, just grab Marvel Unlimited. I mean, you can pretty much keep up on every bit of modern Marvel if you're willing to wait a little while. So, high recommendations for Marvel Unlimited. And
that's thousands of comics for our dozens and dozens of listeners.
And it just drives home the fact that we continue to wait for a hypothetical online unlimited DC Comics subscription service.
Interesting you should bring that up, Nick.
Oh, God.
I feel like there may be a sponsorship perhaps coming in the not too distant future.
God almighty.
Nevertheless, what we've just done is we've just told you all about the loving, vast nirvana that is Marvel Unlimited. So, if any employees of Marvel Comics happen to be listening to this podcast right now, we would love to have a sponsorship. Yeah. We just love it. Yeah, we would love for you to, if you drop just a few measly dollars, we'll be happy to do plugs like that every single week. We'll be happy to pass that information on to our loyal and lovely listeners. With that being said, we're going to take a break. We're going to let you hear about some of the other lovely podcasts around Place to Be Nation and Place to Be Nation Pop, Sunday Groove, Seller Point,
like David
Sassy. Oh gosh, what else is there? Imaginary Stories podcast. There's all kinds of great stuff out there. Seller's Point, of course. Conversation Comics with Todd Weber and Tim Cable talking about the X-Men. And, of course, the longest-running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation.
The Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
That's right. And we'll be back right after this.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey, pro wrestling announcer Kevin Kelly here. I want to make sure you are all subscribed to all the great feeds here at Place to Be Nation. It's really easy to do. Just head to iTunes or your preferred podcatcher app today and search and subscribe to the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, which, of course, includes the full archives of the Kevin Kelly Show, the Place to Be Nation pod feed, and the Pro Wrestling Only feed. Subscribe, listen, and then rate us and leave feedback today. And be sure to give Justin your true thoughts. I mean, don't hold back. After all, he is kind of a jerk. Just listen to Scott.
Place to Be Nation's JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we offer those to you on 3 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the original Place to Be podcast, as well as Main Event, Lucha Afterground, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows, as well as the Our Vantage Point podcast and Jeff Learns Wrestling. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver quick-hit pod blasts on topics old and new.
Over on the Pro Wrestling Only feed, we dive deep inside the wrestling business with a stacked army of experts leading the way. The feed features potpourri shows such as This Week in Wrestling, Greetings from Allentown, Psychology is Dead, Puro Potpourri, Stacy and Elliot's Bogus Journey, and the Military Industrial Suplex. We also have shows that focus intently on certain topics like Letters from Center Stage, Space City, and NWA Classics on Demand Adventure, Through the Years, Strong Style History, Strong Style Story, and Mount Olympus. Plus, the feed has the full archives of legendary shows like Titans of Wrestling, Where the Big Boys Play, Letters from Kayfabe, and much more. And on our popular Place to Be Nation Pop podcast feed, we offer such great shows as the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Rank and File, PTBN Dadcast, Go Home in a Box, NBA Team, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Todd Weber's Conversation, Geek and Sassy, and Imaginary Stories podcasts.
You can find all of these current shows plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to all of our feeds on iTunes, and while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth stretch projects and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when shopping online, and download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and Fall River, Massachusetts, TheHistoryOfWrestling.com, and Scott Keats' Blog of Doom. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
And that's when I said, oh, hi, welcome back, folks. Welcome back.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there.
Didn't see you there. Welcome back to the show. Gosh, we're so disheveled right now. But we do, nevertheless, appreciate you sticking with us through the break. We're going to hit you up with all of our weekly content now that we bring you each and every week here from the L-Shaped Studio. And we're going to start things off with our weekly look at the news and notes in the comic book world. It's called The Rundown.
Welcome to the Rundown.
Do-do-do-do-do.
Where we talk some comic news. Welcome to the Rundown. Where we talk about movies too.
Tremendous. And boy, we've got a loaded slate here, Nick, because we didn't do a rundown last week.
No, we did not. We went a little bit overboard with our Justice League review, so we wound up cutting our weekly segments from the show entirely, except for we gave our CW TV show rankings, but that was it. So, hell of a rundown this week. We tried to just pick the biggest stories from the last 2 weeks. Didn't want to get into quite everything because we don't want to do a 4-hour show. But yeah, so do have some big news from throughout the last 2 weeks. So why don't we jump right into it, Greg, with perhaps the biggest news of them all over at Marvel Comics.
Yes, a big seismic shift over in the editorial structure at Marvel Comics. Editor-in-Chief Axel Alonso has announced that he is departing Marvel entirely. And in his place, in his stead, will be named C.B. Cebulski, who has been an editor and a writer for years. He had a stint as a freelance editor on some Image titles, joined Marvel in 2002, writing for their Mangaverse line, and has some controversy associated with him right now for writing Japanese-themed stories under a Japanese pseudonym.
Yes. Akira Yoshida, I believe, was the pseudonym.
Yes, I believe that's the pseudonym. And this has he admitted to doing this. This has brought him under some fire right now. But nevertheless, he's got a lot of comic creators that are supporting him. And he oversaw the launch as an editor of Runaways and a few other titles. Nevertheless, he is taking over for Axel Alonso, who in turn took over in his role from Joe Quesada several years ago. This is probably about 2010, maybe.
God, I don't even remember what year that was.
It's so long ago. Yeah, Quesada. But the difference here is when Joe Quesada left his EIC position, which is EIC at Marvel is always going to be a big deal.
Yes.
Position. And when Quesada left, he actually left for a promotion to a Jeff Johns-like role over at Marvel. In terms of his
chief creative officer, I believe.
Chief creative officer or something like that. Alonso was named editor-in-chief in January 2011 and has overseen some great successes at Marvel and some great failures at Marvel. And, his ouster, or I don't even know if it'd be fair to call it an ouster, but his leaving this position is pretty interesting because he was tied so intrinsically to continuing a lot of the I suppose momentum or a lot of the concepts and ideas that Quesada had introduced during his long tenure as EIC, but also Alonso is known for his meticulous ability to storyboard big stories and whatnot, and so Alonso kind of oversaw a continuation of that perpetual Marvel event cycle, and I think what we've seen in recent years is that was starting to peter out, and his approach, for better or worse, was no longer being received well by audiences, and as a whole, Marvel feels like it has lost some momentum in recent years, and maybe this change is something that will help in that regard. I don't know. And he also, from my perspective anyway, kind of developed a reputation for trolling the fan base a little bit. Whenever Marvel would make sweeping changes to characters, whether it would be, introducing some diversity to the line by having legacy characters to represent women or minorities take on established roles, whether it be with Jane Foster Thor or Sam Wilson Cap or what have you. He was always the guy that was kind of seemed to be poking the bear of the fans who were upset or fans who were concerned about the future of their classic characters and stuff. And that's just something that, I feel like you can kind of have your new characters and concepts without, going out of your way to piss off your longtime fans. So it always felt to me like he was a very strange practitioner of public relations, somebody that probably could have used some pointers from old Greg Phillips in that regard. Absolutely. I mean, he could have learned more about synergy, more about infrastructure, more about content integration. I think that's a key. You have to have content integration meetings. You have to have them frequently, and they have to last a minimum of 2 hours.
Right.
But no, in all seriousness, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think part of my reaction to this being positive of him leaving is tied up in just what I think was a pretty poor management of public relations in recent years. I think it's almost like a boy. He's like a shining example, and everyone in comics is guilty of this to a degree, but he's like a shining example of the boy who cried wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Every single story cannot be the biggest story in the history of Marvel Comics.
Right.
Every single event cannot change the face of Marvel Comics as you know it. Because guess what? As the stories continue to happen and things don't change that much and they don't really have long-lasting impact or effects, the audience catches up to that. And people get tired of having their intelligence insulted by you constantly going on Good Morning America or whatever the show may be and saying, this is a permanent change and it's never going to go back to the way it was. This is a new and bold era for Marvel. It feels like Alonso oversaw 6 consecutive bold new eras for Marvel.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, he was responsible for the Marvel Legacy and Marvel Now and Marvel...
The Age of Heroes.
Just every tagline and relaunch that has gone on over the last 7 years, almost 7 years, came under his stewardship. And I'm hoping that Marvel Legacy at least will, for the time being, put an end to the constant relaunches and kind of just let us, let these series stand on their own legs rather than feeling the need to arbitrarily relaunch them every 20 issues just because you need to be number one on the table.
Take your time, apply a hold, and sell. For God's sake, tell a story and sell. Quit damn high spots. Quit jumping off the top rope. Quit diving out of the ring. You get this is awesome chance. Yeah, you might get that chance for a minute, but what's going to happen 20 minutes into the match, huh? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when people get tired of seeing the same high spot events over and over again? You've got to let the match breathe.
I agree. But I do think, like you, I find it pretty interesting that he's leaving Marvel entirely, whereas a lot of the times when we have these shifts in leadership at the top, most of them just move on to new roles within either the company itself or the parent company, whether it's, Jeff Johns kind of moving on from DC Comics to do DC Film for Warner Brothers, or like you mentioned earlier, Joe Quesada moving on to become the chief creative officer and work in pretty much all aspects of Marvel. I find it very interesting that Axel Alonso has kind of either found the door himself or been shown the door by somebody. I think that's very interesting. And I think it shows that perhaps the big brass at Marvel are kind of listening to some of the fan response to the events of the last few years, and maybe actually starting to think about a new approach entirely.
Yeah, and I hope they're not listening to the wrong fans, for lack of a better term.
Right.
There is a certain loud fan base right now that is angry at Marvel for reasons that are less creative in nature and more
allegedly political, based on his fans
in nature,
in the opinion of that certain subset of fans.
I think there are plenty of creative reasons to be upset with Marvel's handling of various characters right now. Legitimate complaints, but they cannot be mixed in with the illegitimate complaints that that Marvel has at times dealt with recently. So,
yes,
but
yes, I'll say yes.
But yes, there's a lot of creative issues there. I've not, I've made it clear I haven't read Marvel comics regularly in 20 years, but largely that used to be financial, and in recent years it's been both financial and the fact that I wasn't interested in anything really that was going on in the line outside of maybe a title here or there that I could read later.
That's kind of the way I've been. I follow my Bendis books, which, are going to be ending soon because he's moving over to DC. And I follow Thor, and I will occasionally pick up on a Marvel event if the event's premise sounds interesting to me, but I don't read Avengers. I don't read most of the books that are driving the main Marvel continuity. So we'll see how Sobolski, what kind of changes he can implement, and maybe it'll get me to be more interested in the overall Marvel universe as a whole. But I don't know. I've been gone from the every week goings on of the main Marvel universe pretty much since I guess it would have been Siege, and I haven't really felt a strong desire to come back to it in any large fashion. So who knows?
Red Onslaught didn't get you, Nick?
Red Onslaught, no, it did not. But we have Red Onslaught, we have the Red Hulk, we have the Red She-Hulk. Lots of good. When's the Red Totally Awesome Hulk coming? That's what I want to know.
That's a great question. And don't forget, you've got the Scarlet Witch, and you've got the Black Widow who has red hair.
Right.
So don't confuse them all. But one area, while the comics side of Marvel is undergoing some changes right now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe just continues to juggernaut on with seemingly no end in sight, or no slow in momentum in sight, because this week marked the release of the official teaser trailer for Avengers Infinity War, which is the comic book event of the year in 2018. I don't care what other movies are coming out, and there's some great ones coming out next year, or some exciting ones coming out next year.
For sure.
This is the event for comic book films.
Are you saying, Greg?
Yeah, I'm saying it's not just a movie.
It's an event.
It's an event, and but this is going to be the place to be in the comic book. If you don't see one comic book film, this feels like the one that most people are most about, as they should be.
This has been. I mean, like, this is the Avengers of the Avengers, if that makes any level of sense. Like, you remember how pumped we all were to go see the first Avengers movie because they had built to it over 5 movies, and now they have just continued to build and build and build, and this honestly feels like the culmination of a 10-year, 20-movie journey that we've been on to this point, and I for one cannot wait. Just from a conceptual standpoint, getting to see how they pull that off. And then they dropped the freaking trailer, which was amazing. Just amazing.
Absolutely amazing. You have to understand, folks, what this represents to me. I was reading and keeping up with the Infinity Gauntlet when it came out in 1991 when I was 7 years old. And the reason for that is it was the buzz of school. We would go into school in my town of Venice, Florida, on whenever I don't remember when we'd get the comics back then. Basically, we'd get them from the newsstand, usually. Some kids would get them from the comic shop, but I would always get them from the newsstand until a few years later. But the kids would come in, and I was able to keep up with it by them bringing their issues to school and me reading it and stuff, and also just hearing them talk about it. And we would all talk about it. It was the story, what felt at that time to our tiny brains as the biggest comic story that had ever happened. Like, this was enormous and felt important, and I never dreamed or imagined that we would ever see a movie version of it, not a live action movie. I thought maybe we'd get a cartoon version on X-Men or something, but I never thought we would see a movie version of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, which is basically what we're getting with Infinity War. And this trailer was everything that I could have asked for. I don't even know where to begin, Nick. Everything about this trailer was incredible. The sense of the way it builds, the music throughout it, how now all of a sudden, after years of us complaining about the Marvel movies having kind of forgettable music, that Avengers theme has now become iconic.
Yeah, it really has.
And whether it was the Spidey sense of Spider-Man with his hair standing up on his arm, whether it was the arrival at the end of the trailer of the Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor being paired off with them, which makes so much more sense than when the comics paired Iron Man with the Guardians, by the way. Thor and the Guardians just feel like a natural fit to me. Or whether it was Loki with the Tesseract cube again, whether it was the great line, "Get this man a shield," and then Captain America emerging from the shadows with a beard. I mean, there's just so much to love in this trailer. The character interactions are going to be awesome. The Thanos, the quintessential Thanos line of when he's talking about fun, and he says fun isn't something you consider in the grand scheme of things, but I must admit this puts a smile on my face. That is so Thanos. Incredible.
How about the scene of, like, we all knew it was coming from the moment that the Infinity Stone was placed in his head in Age of Ultron, but we actually see in this trailer a snippet of Thanos beginning to rip the Infinity Stone out of the forehead of the Vision, which is just one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen in a comic book film, let alone a trailer. Oh, everything about it, man, just looks so great. That Loki scene, as we discussed offline, I love that little 2-second shot of Loki holding out the Tesseract so much for so many different reasons, because Tom Hiddleston continues to just play that character so well that even in this trailer, you have no idea, like, what Loki is thinking or feeling in that moment, because he has this look of, like, sadness and terror, and like there are tears streaming down his face, and you don't know if this is something he was intending to do all along, or if this is something he's being forced to do, or if this is something he is doing willingly to play both sides against each other for his own personal gain. That character in the MCU just has so many layers to it that a 3-second shot in a trailer cannot be taken at face value, and I love it.
Speaking of multi-layers and depth, I'm really excited to see more of Scarlet Witch in this movie. And in addition to that, I would say...
what about Human Vision, by the way?
Yes, Human Vision. I was about to bring that up with... what is the actor's name?
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany, yep. Now, what are the characters we don't see in the trailer? Ant-Man?
Ant-Man. Wasp as well. We see Hulk, we see Thor, we see Cap.
War Machine.
No Nick Fury. Do we see Nick Fury?
I don't think we see him. We hear him at the beginning. He delivers that first line.
But that was, I thought, just lifted from the first Avengers movie. We don't see Maria Hill, I don't believe. We don't see Hawkeye, do we?
No Hawkeye. Yeah, I don't remember seeing Hawkeye. It's possible we do, but I don't
maybe.
And Drax. We don't see Drax.
And we don't see Drax. And that's it. Like, because Mantis was there on the on the ship at the end. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It just, oh god, it looks so great. And like Thanos is in the trailer just wrecking things and destroying them, and they show you the gauntlet where he's only got like 2 stones in it, and so you know everything is just going to continue to build and build and build. I can't wait, man.
And there's still a chance that this could lead to Thanatos. I'm getting a headache.
Yeah, maybe that's the biggie. They drop him on his head in an abandoned pool, and it pushes, his metal helmet down into his scalp.
Ooh.
I think it's a possibility.
Now, he would have to be wearing his metal helmet in order for that to happen. And in this trailer, we get bald Thanos, who looks a little like a Satan appendage.
I have seen some people have said he looks a little like a certain former Avengers director.
Are you suggesting it looks like Joss Whedon?
Some people have suggested that, yeah.
I've seen Bruce Willis. I've seen Jim Gaffigan.
Jim Gaffigan. God. But no, this trailer, I mean, Marvel they cut a trailer better than just about anybody on the face of this planet at this point. I can't remember the last, bad Marvel trailer I've seen. Because even the Doctor Strange trailers, which I know you weren't as high on the movie as I was, they wowed you with visuals.
The trailers were amazing, yeah.
Yeah, they know how to cut a trailer at this point. And the great thing about it is, Greg, this movie is still 6 months away. Right around 6 months away, 5 months away. And it didn't show you anything in that trailer that you didn't already kind of know was going to happen. Outside of maybe the new Spider-Man suit, what did they really show you in that trailer that you weren't already pretty much going, yeah, that's probably in the movie? Nothing.
And after all, they're not telling you anything you don't already know.
I'm drawing the point that most trailers give away way too much, and this one has not at this point. And honestly,
absolutely.
Don't release
I just wanted
trailer.
to reference Sean O'Hare.
Don't release another trailer. Let this be the one trailer. What would be wrong with that?
Well, Nick, I've made that argument with Star Wars as well. At this point, with Star Wars, all you need is the music and the font, and that's honestly all you need. Maybe an ominous shot of someone looking off the bridge of a ship.
Right.
People are going to go watch it.
Right.
And honestly, sometimes maybe trailers hurt movies more than they help them at times.
Speaking of which, not to get too far off topic, but you have seen the Star Wars TV spot, right?
I'm not even sure, Nick. I've actively attempted to avoid as much
with the shot of Luke standing in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Oh yes.
Oh my god, can we just watch that shot for 2 hours? I'd watch that. Oh,
I'd watch that so hard.
I would.
Well, there is some sad news to report, though, about the MCU, and that is a report from Vanity Fair confirming what has long been speculated, that the contracts of all of the original Avengers actors end after Avengers 4, which is slated for release in 2019 as a direct follow-up to Infinity War. Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Chris Hemsworth, and Jeremy Renner, their contracts are all coming to an end. Chris Hemsworth was quoted as saying, "We're all aware that this is going to be the last time we get to hang out like this." Now, it's worth noting that Marvel in the past has worked out renewals and extensions for Robert Downey Jr., as well as from some of the other actors. But Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios president, says Avengers 4 is a true finale, quote, unlike any other ending in the superhero film genre. He says there'll be 2 distinct periods, everything before Avengers 4 and everything after. So what does this all mean, Nick? Do you really think this is the end of the line for these actors, or do you think there's a chance they'll come back for more?
I think it's probably the end of the line for most of them. I have a hard time seeing them ever truly shutting the door entirely on Robert Downey Jr. But I think they're trying to. I mean, it makes a level of sense that you want to continue to freshen things up and you want to continue to move things forward. And if you let these actors walk away and let the characters kind of lay dormant, for a few years, then you can kind of recast. I think without as much backlashes you would probably get if you recast immediately.
Right. It's going to be awful hard. I mean, not just Robert Downey Jr. goes without saying because he pretty much is Tony Stark at this point, but Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth are right on that level, I would say.
I agree. And who else are we? Let's see. Who else was named in this?
Mark Ruffalo.
And see, that's the thing. I mean, with Evans and Hemsworth, I think we've explored those characters enough where I feel satisfied. But I still feel like we haven't really done enough with Hulk or Black Widow or Hawkeye for that matter to really let them walk away.
The big white whale in this for me is going to be, or the sticking point rather for me, not a white whale. That's a bad analogy. I should have read Moby Dick better. But if they allow Scarlett Johansson to leave without ever doing a Black Widow movie, it's egregious in my opinion. And I don't use that word lightly, but I think it's been completely ridiculous that we haven't had a Black Widow movie to this point. I don't buy any of the excuses for it. And if they allow her to walk while doing a solo movie, I think it would be a huge mistake. So I'm very hopeful they'll re-sign her because it needs to happen. They need to give her that opportunity. She's earned it, beyond earned it. And they need to do it. So I'm hoping they do.
And now it just I think that this news, I mean, we all kind of suspected this, but it puts a lot of pressure on that next generation. Like Benedict Cumberbatch,
Tom Holland, Black Panther actor.
I was wondering if you were going to give it the old college try or not. What is that guy's name? Is it? Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Nick, because I happen to know
Chadwick
Boseman. See, we were thinking of different guys. We were both thinking of Baron Mordo.
We were thinking of Chiwetel Ejiofor
as Baron Mordo.
Who played Baron Mordo.
Who's awesome and needs to come back as well, by the way.
And he is in the Doctor Strange sequel. But anyway, this next generation is going to be a lot of pressure on these guys to kind of continue the momentum, and it's going to be very interesting to see because Marvel has kind of been able to play this character escalation game very well. Whereas when the MCU started, Iron Man and Captain America and Thor and Hulk and all these characters were kind of looked on as like borderline B-list characters, like C to B-list characters, and they've kind of been elevated into A-list characters. And now they're kind of playing that game with Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and Black Panther and Captain Marvel coming up, where these were, like C-list characters that have kind of been elevated to B-list, borderline A-list characters. So I'm just interested to see how deep they have to go into their, what are we really thinking about in terms of the next, because as they're promoting this generation of current Avengers, they got to be setting up the generation to follow.
The new Avengers.
And I'm just interested to see who that's going to be.
We've got, and speaking of which, in his interview with Vanity Fair, Kevin Feige says we're 22 movies in, and we've got another 20 movies on the docket that are completely different from anything that's come before intentionally. Now, that includes Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, which have been announced. You'd assume also, barring any disaster, sequels for Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and the upcoming Captain Marvel. At least 15 projects unknown. So, assuming that these are not going to be a surprise Iron Man 4 or Captain America 4 or Thor 4 or another Guardians of the Galaxy or another Avengers film, although I personally think you have to assume there's going to be another Avengers film.
Yeah, it'll just
New Avengers.
The new Avengers or something like that. The idea that there isn't going to be another Avengers film is kind of silly. That's still
silly. Yes. So, but that leaves you're looking at least 15 open slots of mystery films, for lack of a better term. Do we want to speculate now, Nick, or is it much too early to do so?
But 15 is so many that I feel like speculation is so hard. I couldn't name you 15 characters that I could come up with I mean,
do you think it's possible they do team up movies? Something like I'm trying to think of, Marvel team up. You get sometimes Spider-Man and the Human Torch or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you very easily could, and I think you'll continue to see an interconnectivity where these various characters will pop up in each other's movies.
I think perhaps a Hulk solo movie, if they can ever get that worked out. Black Widow would
Ruffalo,
be great.
but then you have the Ruffalo of it all, so you don't know. Maybe She-Hulk, that's a possibility. I could see that.
Shulk. Yes, they can do that. You could, of course, have a Black Widow movie, which I mentioned needs to happen.
Right, definitely needs to happen.
A Hawkeye movie could be possible.
Right. What's really interesting is this other quote from Disney CEO Bob Iger, who he says, "We are looking for worlds that are completely separate, geographically or in time, from the worlds that we've already visited." Is it possible that some of these films could be, prequels or alternate futures or something like that with recast versions of these classic characters? Like, could you possibly see a Thor movie that just doesn't take place in modern continuity? Like it's
an old King Thor movie.
Oh my God! Oh, the greatest of ideas, in my opinion. And then the other thing,
we haven't seen the character of Kang the Conqueror. Who is a time-traveling villain who has that kind of ability, so that could be a good gateway to that.
And looming over all of this is the possibility, it's been rumored out there, the Disney Fox deal is apparently being resuscitated, and that's still a possibility.
And that would open up a whole world.
If that happens, you have there's no limit to what you could do, because, then you've got any number of X-Men solo films, you've got the Fantastic Four, you've got the X-Men, and together you've got the X-Men and the Avengers. Just tons of things you can.
And let's just assume that Marvel is going to, or Disney is going to surreptitiously reacquire the rights to Namor the Submariner if Aquaman does well.
Right.
So that would give you a movie as well. Yep. So there's a lot of possibilities, and the future looks bright for the MCU. As long as they continue to be smart with how they handle their talent and how they cast, they seem to be going in the right direction, because they really haven't missed with any of their casting yet.
Who plays Liam Neeson? Who plays
Liam Neeson plays Liam Neeson.
Who plays Namor in a Namor? Liam Neeson or John Hamm? I'm just saying, because allegedly they have the two biggest dicks in Hollywood, and you got to have somebody who can fill the bulge that needs to be represented in a Namor film.
Interesting. That's a good question. Who? I don't know. Given what we've learned, perhaps Harvey Weinstein should play Namor the Submariner, since both are sexual predators.
Namor
was blatantly assaulting Sue Storm. I'm just saying.
Yeah, back in the 60s, he trapped her in the Fantastic Four in S&M Studios.
Well, one person who probably has also been trapped in S&M Studios with himself is Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. One of the longtime X-Men characters, who is primarily associated with X Factor. Yo, you dealing with the X Factor. And indeed, I got everything I ever wanted, and I'll never look like that. The reason I bring up Madrox, the Multiple Man, multiple Migs, if you will, is that the report came out.
That would certainly be an interesting take on Multiple Man.
It would. There'd be a lot to go around, Nick. So the report came out that 20th Century Fox, which is recently gaining a reputation for taking wild chances with their properties, is taking another chance, and they are going all in on James Franco to star in and develop a movie along with producer Simon Kinberg about Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. Franco, of course, has a history in comic book films, playing Harry Osborn in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, but he's also known for his very out there and creative indie films and indie projects, and right now he's gaining notoriety and Oscar buzz for his role in the Disaster Artist, the movie about Tommy Wiseau, or however you pronounce his name. So Franco is going to play Madrox, who, for those that don't know, is a mutant with the very peculiar mutant ability to create exact duplicates of himself that have independent thoughts and personalities. And if you've ever seen the X Factor episode of the animated series, there's this really cool scene where he gets hit, and every time he gets hit, it creates this, other version of himself. And it's just one of the coolest power sets in the entire X-Men universe to me. I've always been fascinated by his powers, although I admit I've never really read much of his or any of his solo material or much about his character development and all that stuff. He was just always one of those characters that had an awesome power that I thought would translate well to the big screen. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I think Franco is the right guy to find a sort of idiosyncratic take on Multiple Man that will make him stand out from the rest of the field.
And apparently Franco confirmed, he didn't come out and say Multiple Man, but he did confirm in an interview that he was working on an X-Men project, and he said it was going to be, quote, a hard R and unlike anything you've ever seen. So, not sure what that means and what that take would even be, but given Fox's recent track record with these solo, standalone X-Men films and Franco's heavy involvement with the development of this project, I'm all for it, and I'll definitely check it out.
Well, in keeping with the Silence of the Lamb themes, what if the hard R is because a scene in which he duplicates himself in a room and goes, "Would you fuck me?"
And then
hard fuck me.
And then he fucks himself.
And then he does.
That's a great question. Do you think the Multiple Man ever, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, sure. I'd have to assume he tried.
And did.
Yes. And succeeded. But was the process as enjoyable as he initially thought? It's really a science experiment. And then since there's individual distinct personalities, though they're under his central control, it begs the question of consent. It begs the question of pleasure. Is it true pleasure? Because does he feel? Is it? There's just so much to get into that I don't feel it's appropriate for this podcast. But perhaps for one of our weekend Skype sessions with the rest of our PTB and Comics crew.
If you tear his anus, does it not bleed?
Do you bleed?
You will.
You will.
All right.
Tony, the Klondike Bill bleed. Anyway. But one area that remains, well, that's exciting. One area that remains concerning and almost maddening at times is the DCEU corner.
DCEU corner.
And boy, we got some heads rolling right now, Nick, because Justice League, as we reviewed right here on the Hard-Traveling Fanboys just a week ago, and we had our thoughts on it clear. You thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good, pretty entertaining for what it was. But it's been a disaster at the box office. There's no other way around it. It's drastically underperformed its expectations. It had a monstrous budget and it appears that it's going to surpass that, but there's no way it's going to hit the expectations Warner had for it. And regardless of what your thoughts are on Warner's expectations for all their movies that seem to get every movie they release, they seem to have ridiculous expectations for. But regardless of that, Justice League should have been a huge hit. Justice League should have been a bigger hit than Thor Ragnarok in terms of appeal, mass appeal. It wasn't. So heads are rolling right now, and reports are coming out of the woodwork about all the behind-the-scenes drama that went into the making of Justice League. We've been over all of this here on the show as it's happened, but there have been a couple of articles, one from The Wrap and one from Vanity Fair, that have come out in the last week that have really shed a lot of light on the issues going on behind the scenes of Justice League, if you believe these reports at face value. I think Vanity Fair can be safely trusted. I think The Wrap is hit or miss, but there's two different bylines on it, not just Humberto Gonzalez, so I think that adds a little bit more validity to the report. And basically, it paints a horrible picture of WB Pictures. I mean, there's no other way around it, Nick. It paints a picture of a studio that, on one hand, that is telling one side one thing and telling another side another.
Yep, because what have we heard every time that when we talk about the idea of Warner Brothers not really having a cohesive vision and one eye kind of steering the ship the way Marvel has Kevin Feige. We've always heard, well, Warner Brothers is a filmmaker driven studio. We really want to empower our filmmakers to tell their own distinctive stories that, yes, can tie together, but we don't really need one overseer driving the creative vision. Bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit if these reports are true.
I would recommend everybody to go and read this article at the Wrap. It's not the best structured article. It's not greatly written necessarily, but the material is very interesting, and it goes into the history of the DC film universe, going back to Christopher Nolan and his overwhelming success with the Dark Knight trilogy, and how that led into Man of Steel. And at the time, Warner Brothers went all in on Zack Snyder, and they were going to give Zack Snyder the same power they gave Christopher Nolan. The difference is Nolan had a different level of cash as a filmmaker than Snyder had, and so when Snyder's Man of Steel came out and was divisive, although I would point out still better received than anything that's followed since from the DCU, and other than Woman, Snyder, his film came out and it did not light the world on fire, so to speak, even though it did well. And that started, but they were still in on it, but that started the kind of concerns the studio had. So the sequel of sorts to Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, being even darker than Man of Steel was, led to bickering behind the scenes, and it came out and it did well financially, but underperformed what WB's expectations were. They were expecting it to be an enormous hit, critically and otherwise, and it did very poorly with critics. It had a huge drop-off in the box office. Suicide Squad disappointed, obviously. WB has thought they've had a hit with every film to this point, and we talk about that, Nick. Every comes out and we hear early screenings are glowing in their reviews of
positive test screenings. Early Twitter buzz for embargo reviews that can't come out for another 2 weeks say they sound positive.
And yes, precisely. I remember reports when Batman vs. Superman was doing its earliest screenings, and it's always these really hyperbolic things like the entire theater of executives stood up and applauded, and some wiped tears from their eyes.
Executives gave a standing ovation.
It reminds me of some of the ridiculous backstage WWE reports that come out, about Vince McMahon was furious backstage after the segment. It just makes it sound like he just stomps around backstage throwing things constantly at the slightest thing going wrong. So, maybe that's true. I don't know. But regardless, these hyperbolic reports of early studio screenings, then they get befuddled when the movie comes out and it isn't an overwhelming hit. It isn't universally loved by everyone. So then Warner Brothers starts getting cold feet about Zack Snyder and his vision, and they start meddling. They want to change some things here and there. They want to change some things in BVS. They want to change some things in Suicide Squad. They want to take Justice League, that was supposed to be Zack Snyder's project that they went all in on, and they want him to lighten it up. They want him to add more humor in. They want him to make it different from they think the failure for Batman vs. Superman was how grim and dour it was. So this creates a back and forth with Zack Snyder. He's not really happy with some of the changes, and they're continuing to do that. Meanwhile, they're flirting with Joss Whedon. They want to bring Joss in. They like the idea of him coming in and changing some things up. And around the same time, you get the tragedy of what happened with Zack Snyder's daughter, and he decides to he's originally going to come back and work on the project some more, but the sentiment against him at the studio had turned such a degree that the way this article makes it sound, they basically kind of forced him out, and he just said, you know what, it's not worth the ongoing hassle with the studio. I'm just going to go off and deal with this myself and do my own personal project. So he leaves. You bring in Joss Whedon. Whedon wants to change a lot. They bring him in to fundamentally change the movie, but they don't let him change it enough to be vastly different from what Snyder was doing. They want to kind of build that connective tissue because, allegedly, they want the movie, they're steadfast in the release date. And we also talked about this, Nick, I think on our podcast. If not, we talked about it offline, about how there was no reason why they had to release Justice League in November.
Nope. No,
that
release date had already moved twice, I believe.
Yep.
And like at that point, the only reason they didn't move it, I believe, was because they wanted to avoid another PR hit for having to delay the film again.
That it would be a sign of weakness. And there's also a report in here that there were some CEO bonuses that may have been affected by that as well. I don't know the validity of that, but regardless, it was a disaster. You can't have a director come in and remake a movie in 6 months. That's why we got the horrible CGI on Superman's mustache, because they couldn't wait for Henry Cavill to finish filming Mission Impossible and come in and reshoot scenes then. They had to right now and shoehorn it into the movie. And there's another report that came out by Vanity Fair which indicated that a lot of the DCEU fans have been putting all of this on the feet of Joss Whedon, saying he ruined Zack Snyder's vision by making it a comedy fest and all that stuff. And while, yes, Joss wanted to make a lighthearted movie in the same vein as the Avengers, it's come out that he wasn't even really able to make the movie he wanted to make.
Right.
There's an actor who plays the crook at the beginning of the film, says that scene, the reason that scene doesn't make sense is it was conceived of entirely differently and was completely cut down and completely altered to the point that it was, in his quote, unrecognizable. And it removed the comedy from it. It removed the resolution of why Batman is suddenly okay with this guy being there, who's a criminal. It basically fundamentally altered the scene, and he mentions that Joss referred to it in a note as battles lost. They lost battles with the studio. And while Joss is still attached to doing Batgirl, it does not reflect, none of this reflects well on Warner Brothers Pictures, on Kevin Tsujihara, on the entire corporate hierarchy at Warner Brothers with regards to how they're handling the DC properties. It says that on the one hand, hey, we want you to do everything, Zach, but then the minute things start going wrong, it's all Zach's fault.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to bring in our other guy. But then again, we don't necessarily like everything you're doing either, so, you need to do this, that, and the other, and be beholden to this other guy who we basically told him he sucked or whatever. We basically told him he wasn't doing a good enough job. So, regardless your feelings on Zack Snyder, regardless your feelings on Joss Whedon, no one can put out a successful product in that environment. You can count on maybe two hands the number of movies in the last 20 years that have been, quote, Frankenstein productions, which is how it's referred to in the Wrap article by sources close to the situation. But you can count on two hands the number of those in the last 30 years that have been successful. There's not many. It's very, very hard to have conflicting visions that put out a successful, coherent film. And I think
it's pretty much the only one I can think of. Are there others?
I mean, there probably are that I don't know about. I just don't want to put my foot in my mouth by saying there haven't been others. I don't know about some of the movies from the 80s and 90s that may have been like that.
Right. I guess in recent years,
farther back than that, but
right, in recent years, Rogue One is like the example if you're going to attempt to do this.
Yeah, I mean the classic superhero example was Superman 2, where Richard Donner was left the film due to studio interference, and they brought in Richard Lester, and it ended up being a good movie. But it's very rare that happens, and it's just not a good environment. It's not a good situation to be in, and it's very disheartening to read this as a DC fan. I think it's probably the most damning of all the articles I've read. The combination of the Wrap and Vanity Fair are the two most damning articles of the entire picture of Warner Brothers. They're banking it now on Aquaman. But they think, and their great point in that article where it says they're convinced Aquaman's going to be a hit, but then again, they've been convinced every movie is going to be a hit going all the way back to Green Lantern. So it feels like the same problems that haunted Green Lantern in 2011 never went away, Nick. Do you think that's fair for me to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fair for you to say because it's the same studio. Like, changing the guy at the top doesn't necessarily change a culture, and it doesn't change a way of doing business. And for whatever reason, they have been overly reactionary when it comes to the superhero universe, pretty much going back to, like you said, Green Lantern. And even you could probably go further back than that to Superman Returns, because my memory of Superman Returns is that was not intended to just be a one-off. Like, Bryan Singer was going to do a sequel, you know. And
the sequel was going to have Brainiac,
was going to have Brainiac in it. And then Superman Returns came out, and the reaction was mixed, and all that got shelved. And it's just...
And Green Lantern is a movie where so many cooks in the kitchen on it, so many hands in the pie.
Same thing here.
And you'd think that that would be a lesson that would be learned for later. And instead, outside of Man of Steel, what we've seen has been too many cooks in the kitchen. If they were not happy with Man of Steel, it was very simple what you do. If you're not happy with Man of Steel, you bring in a different director to do Batman vs. Superman or whatever your next movie is going to be, and let Snyder do a Man of Steel sequel or whatever.
Right.
If you're not happy with Batman v Superman, certainly think about that. Don't start filming your next movie before the previous movies come out if you're not 100% sure that it's going to be great. And if you are 100% sure that it's great, and you still think it's great when you see the early cuts of it, then don't put it on the feet of the director if the general public doesn't like it.
Right.
That's so disingenuous. If all the reports, maybe they were all false, but I don't believe that. I believe the reports of Warner Brothers loving the early cuts of Batman vs. Superman are true. And if that's the case, stand by your opinion and stand by your movie. Don't go out and suddenly blame everything on the director that you hired, by the way, that you put in charge of the movie, that you gave complete creative control to. Don't blame it all on him. You know, that's on you. You gave him the keys to the kingdom, and if you're not happy, you need to move on. But don't do this half in, half out thing. That was the wrong way to go about it. And it's what's really unfortunate about it, Nick, is the ramifications this is going to have on some of our favorite characters and some of our favorite unfilmed projects going forward. Maybe Aquaman comes out and just demolishes, and I hope it does. I think it looks good. Maybe Wonder Woman 2 comes out and delivers just as much as the first one did, and that buoys things a little bit. But it ain't going to hurt Batman. It ain't going to hurt Wonder Woman. But it's going to hurt the Green Lanterns and the Flashes and we'll see with Aquaman. It's going to hurt the concepts like Doom Patrol or the concepts like Teen Titans, the Nightwings. Projects like that are going to be hurt. Not projects that like Batman or Wonder Woman or, and hell, it's going to hurt Superman probably.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's going to hurt the Justice League, which is stupid. Like...
Yeah.
That's been my biggest thing is I've heard all these rumors that they're going to focus less on an interconnected universe and they're going to do these smaller mini universes of Gotham films and all this other stuff. Like, they are taking, as always, the wrong lessons from this. The lesson is not that you can't do a shared universe. The lesson should be don't do a shared universe in such a rushed, forced, and shitty fashion. Like, take the time, put the work in, get it right. Don't think you can hit some magic and get to where Marvel is overnight. Marvel, at the time of BVS, had been in the game, what, Greg, 8 years? And had, taken their time to build to where they were. And Warner Brothers thought they could get there overnight with 2 movies, and that just wasn't going to happen. You've got to, first, create a level of quality, a standard that when people go to the movie theater, they understand this logo that I'm seeing in front of it means I am going to reasonably expect a certain quality.
Yep. While the timing may be wrong for me to say this, Nick, you've got to trust the process.
No, you absolutely no. I don't care the timing or whatever. You've got to build that standard, and then you've got to creatively weave a narrative that will to care about these individual characters before you try to throw them all together in a giant team-up movie. Because if you do, this is what you get.
Yeah, it actually says that after Batman Superman underwhelmed, this source told the Wrap that this Silverman, who was kind of in charge of the film division at that time, was quite harsh on Zack Snyder, but didn't fire him because removing a director would be a sign of weakness, which is a Vince McMahon line of thinking if ever there was one. I'm with you, Nick. I don't think there's a one-size-fit-all approach to superhero movies. I think but even if you look at what Fox is doing with the X-Men universe, there have been badly received movies in the X-Men universe. Let's be honest. X3, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, both horribly received films.
Right, and then they took their time away. They came up with a new approach. Like, they kind of were able to reboot without rebooting with First Class, right? Like, but they made the wise decision to make a somewhat clean break from what had come before. And I think Warner Brothers' problem is they built on a flawed foundation. As much as I love Man of Steel, and I still love Man of Steel,
too,
it may have been a flawed foundation for an entire interconnected universe. And rather than trying to fix the issues in their foundation, they just built on top of it. And, you know, that's going to cause the house to fall at some point.
Right. Yeah. And there have been opportunities there to do it. But what Fox has done is they've kept an interconnected universe that isn't built the same way the Marvel movies are built. They don't do the whole, you know, and they've done it with the Wolverine and Days of Future Past, but you've got a standalone film in Logan that is intrinsically tied to what has come before and what will come hence, perhaps, but stands on its own. And they've done that with Deadpool, which doesn't have any post-credit scene of Deadpool, you know, hanging out with Patrick Stewart's Professor X or anything, but it's tied into the X-Men universe. And they've done it that way, and it's worked. The problem is you can't cheat. You can't skip the effort and skip the hard work part and try to just get the rewards and think, by God, it's a Justice League. And yeah, you know what the crazy part of this is, Nick? If they had just released a Justice League movie 6 years ago, it probably would have done amazing business with no build-up. But the fact is, they damaged the brand of Justice League with how they've handled everything else that's come before it. It's just a devastating situation for fans, and I hope that it ends up well. Speaking of devastating situations and the DC Universe, let's move down to the television division, and let's talk just a minute about Andrew Kreisberg, who we mentioned last week or the week before, I guess it was, who had been accused of various sundry sexual harassment incidents. Well, now after his suspension from the shows, the Flash and Supergirl executive producer has been fired following the corporate investigation. The studio said in a statement, after a thorough investigation, Warner Brothers Television Group has terminated Andrew Kreisberg's employment effective immediately. Greg Berlanti will assume additional responsibilities on both The Flash, where he will work closely with executive producers, co-showrunner Todd Helbing, and Supergirl, where he will work closely with executive producers and co-showrunners Robert Rovner and Jessica Queller. Not much else for me to say about this. I applaud the decision. If they investigated and found these allegations to have merit, he needed to be gone. And they took care of it. They took care of it rather quickly, I thought, in a much quicker fashion, certainly, than the comics division handled the Eddie Berganza situation over the years. And I applaud him for taking care of it. Glad that they have excised this particular cancer from the what's been overwhelmingly positive thing for the comics industry, I think, and to get him out of the way, hey, more power to him.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You said it perfect, Bubba. I mean, not really much else to add. If all this apparently was true, guy needed to go, and he's gone. So, good on Warner Brothers for making the right move. Just unfortunate that the entire situation happened in the first place. Oh, God. Here we go.
What's that noise, Nick? Do you hear that?
I have no idea what that noise could be. What's this?
That was good. Anyway, the noise you hear yonder in yon hills is the approach of a certain bald, muscular, goateed individual, which means that we're getting a crossover of our worlds again, Nick.
Yes, yes. We always love it when this happens.
The answer to who next is the Flash. Because none other than former WCW and WWE champion, wrestler turned actor, turned wrestler again, Bill Goldberg has been cast for a role unnamed at this point in The Flash, the CW show The Flash, that is. Goldberg tweeted out he was doing this for his boy, who likes The Flash, presumably. Edge, Cody Rhodes, and Eve Torres have already appeared in the Arrowverse in various forms. And Goldberg will be the next to join the line of wrestlers appearing in the Arrowverse. Anytime, we have a rule here on the show that anytime a wrestling and comic crossover of some sort happens, we will cover it and talk about it. So we don't get a chance to talk about wrestling much, but pretty excited for Goldberg. He had a nice return to WWE last year and had a nice little run there with Brock Lesnar, and now he'll go on TV and presumably play some sort of physical threat to the Flash.
Yeah, and that should be awesome. I just hope he gets to spear the Flash at least once in this.
It has
to happen.
It's equivalent of all of the Rock's early movies where he had to do the rock
where
bottom.
he had to do the rock bottom. How come Austin never stunned anyone in a movie?
He should have stunned Sly in The Expendables.
He should have stunned Nash Bridges in Nash Bridges.
I think he actually did use a stunner at one point on Nash Bridges. I can't remember specifically, but I feel like that must have happened at some point. Maybe not, but it feels like the show was tongue-in-cheek enough that it would have worked.
It would have.
But yeah, so I think that's safe to assume we're going to get a spear. Maybe not a jackhammer, but a spear.
Gotta get a spear.
To wrap up this extended edition of the Rundown, we've got some comic book news for you, ladies and gentlemen, from the world of DC Comics. A gentleman who has appeared on a great episode of the Sellers Points podcast several months ago, Liam Sharp, the artist that worked with Greg Rucka on the terrific Wonder Woman Rebirth series, will be releasing a new title where he will be artist and writer for a classic title that is coming back called The Brave and the Bold, Batman and Wonder Woman. It's a 6-part series that will bring elements of Irish and Celtic mythology to Wonder Woman's mythos and the DC universe at large, which means, Nick, that we could see Finn McCool and Balor the Demon appear in Wonder Woman, which would be another sort of wrestling tie-in.
But will we see the extraordinary man who does extraordinary
things? I don't know, Nick, but if there is an extraordinary man who does extraordinary things, I think it would be good for them to remind us in captions and thought bubbles about the fact that he is indeed an extraordinary man who does extraordinary things, don't you?
I think so as well.
Liam Sharp is going to be the writer and artist of this series that brings together 2 parts of DC's trinity of characters, and I know that you are always in for Wonder Woman and Batman team-ups, Nick.
I am.
And this Wonder Woman will enlist Batman to help her investigate the death of a Celtic god. Interesting.
Why are you saying it? Your late-night phone chat voice.
I think it's pretty interesting. I think that's a very compelling concept. I think because in comics you have to figure...
but you have to stop trying to make it sound like you're trying to get me to take my pants off when you say it. Like, come on now.
Can it be both?
It can be both. It often is both, as you well know.
You often podcast pantless here in the L-shaped studio.
Do underwear count?
No, not as pants.
Well, then yes, I'm podcasting pantless.
Luckily, the L-shaped table covers your kibbles and bits there. But
so do my underwear, Greg. For God's sake!
I don't even want to see the outline of any of the meeting two vegs there.
You would actually see the mound of pubic hair sticking out the leg holes, probably.
All right. This has gone way too far. I regret instantly. I regret that whole line of joke. I want to go back in time and excise that from my ears, from my mind, from every aspect.
Quite proud of my mane of pubic hair.
All right. That's enough of that. We are not here to talk about that. I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about. You've completely rendered me useless.
You were seductively whispering about the death of Celtic gods.
I was talking about how in comic books, good God Almighty, we focus so much.
You're the one who did the seductive whisper. Don't blame it on me.
I didn't know what it would lead to.
The death
if
of
I did, I would have
God.
done things so much different.
It sounded like you were reading a promo for silk stockings.
Stockings
to air on the USA Network.
Oh gosh. Or what was La Femme Nikita?
La Femme Nikita, yeah.
The music, the weird music. Ooh, whoa, whoa. That's all I remember about the music. Anyway.
And you always thought there was going to be boning, but there was never boning.
Oh,
and you were
gosh,
like 11 and you thought this is going to be awesome. And then it never was. But yet you got your hopes up each and every week.
Now, silk stockings there always was boning.
Right, but, you always thought there,
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But, man, that Peter Wilson. Peter! So, anyway.
Oh, we have entered an area of time and space known simply as the Garner Zone.
And we've focused in comics so much about Norse mythology and Greek and Roman mythology. Would you agree? That have been the primary exploration of superhero comics.
Absolutely.
I think Celtic mythology is something I don't know anything about outside of Finn Balor talked about in his documentary. But that's a whole new world for comics. And so our mainstream American superhero comics. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am as well. I think, like you said, something new, something that kind of everybody enters on this similar, unfamiliar plane. So it's going to be interesting to all go on this journey together.
Whew. Mercifully, that's the end of the rundown.
Whew.
And let's get right into it. Let's not burn any midnight oil or I don't know.
Let's get right into the abbreviated version of
Read Down and Watching.
Read down and watching. What you been reading and watching?
What you been reading and watching?
And we're going to start off with reading because we got to hit this up. It's the comic book event of last week anyway. And it's gotten so much buzz. The release of Doomsday Clock.
Absolutely.
Number 1. And for a change, I actually bought a comic as it came out and read it. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, in this case,
you actually read it before I did.
I did. I helped out with that because my version I had to pick up from a store that was not around me in Mobile, Alabama, USA, and my good buddy Todd Weber hooked me up with a copy of it as well, and I was able to read it, and I was blown away. Jeff Johns and awesome. Gary Frank are the creative team on this, and it is so much more of a sequel to Watchmen than even I was anticipating.
Yeah, I agree completely. So many things we could say about it. I don't really want to spoil too much for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet. I knew I was going to love Jeff Johns' writing, but I love Gary Frank. Like, don't get me wrong, but I was blown away by how evocative Frank's work was in terms of making you think of Dave Gibbons. It was like he was doing Gibbons through his own lens, and I was blown away by the art in this one.
It was the layouts and the textures of Dave Gibbons with the hyper
realistic
attention to facial detail of Gary Frank, and it was amazing.
It really was.
Without hyperbole. It was that classic Jeff Johns first issue of a story that we talk about so many times. No writer, I would say, in the history of comics comes out of the gate swinging with the first issue of a story like Jeff Johns. Instantly, I'm compelled to see where this goes. He had the balls to introduce new characters to the world of Watchmen, and it works.
Yep, it really does. It's a great thing to see. I mean, 2-3 new characters introduced in this one, and you kind of like all of them. I mean, it's really cool. Mm-hmm. And this one was kind of sold as the continuation of the mysteries that were brought up all the way back in DC Rebirth #1 last year, and yet there's barely any DC universe in this book. This first issue is almost a straight up sequel to Watchmen 7 years after the events of the original.
And while we are deliberately avoiding spoilers, and this I'm not going to spoil this, the tease of a potential story element that could be undone related to Superman was very exciting to me.
You think they'll do that?
I think they will.
I think they should. I don't know that they will. We'll see. Time will tell.
Time will tell. I'm extremely excited about where they're going with this, Nick. Yeah, I think both of us would recommend people to check this out.
Absolutely. It's not a recommend. It's if you are even the slightest bit of a comic book fan right now, you got to read this because something important is happening.
Absolutely. And I would recommend reading Watchmen as well, if you haven't. Read this issue, and whatever you don't understand, go back and read Watchmen.
And if you still don't understand something after reading Watchmen, go listen to Place to Be Nation Pop, Comic Book Theater. And that could probably help you really understand the nuance of some of these characters.
Absolutely. Nick, do you have any other things for reading? Because that's it for me.
Jesus H. Christ, do I? I got a metric fuck ton. This is going to...
That sounds like a Reed Richards line.
Yep. I am the Reed Richards of the Place to Be Nation Pop universe. But anyway, I'll do these as quickly as I possibly can. Once again, not really ranking them, just trying to blow through these titles that I've been catching up on. Mighty Thor 701. Jason Aaron's take on the origin of the Mangog and a cool fight between he and the War Thor. Good action issue, good dialogue, continues the momentum of Jason Aaron's Thor. Batman 35 wraps up the little two-part rules of engagement storyline. Selina and Talia, this simultaneous sword fight / conversation about why they each care for Bruce in their own way. Very well written by Tom King, in my opinion. The Batman Who Laughs, #1, the one-shot tie-in into Metal. It was fine. James Tynion IV. I thought the origin of this Jokerized Batman was a little underwhelming, honestly, but it was well written and well drawn by Riley Russmo. Then I caught up on some Wonder Woman. I read Wonder Woman 29, 30, and 31 this week. 28, 29, and 30 wrapped up the Shea Fontana brief run on the character, and that was serviceable enough, I suppose, but not the best thing in the world. Then I read the first issue of James Robinson and Carlos Pagulian's Wonder Woman run, and I was hooked immediately. This Wonder Woman take is awesome, and I can't wait to read more of where this story is going. A worthy successor to Greg Rucka at last. Batgirl and the Bird of Prey. I picked up 13, 14, 15, and 16. 13 wraps up the Source Code storyline, which is kind of one of the title's weaker bits that I had honestly forgotten a lot of the finer points of because it's been so long since I've read this title. 14 was a little one-shot where they have an interaction with Deacon Blackfire, who it's always cool to see coming back around periodically. And then 15 and 16 kicks off a massive, crossover guest star called Manslaughter, where all the men of Gotham City have become infected with this virus, and you get to see Catwoman and Ivy and Harley and Wonder Woman and Gotham Girl and basically all the big heroines of the DC universe coming together here in Gotham to combat this, and it's kind of cool to see them all running around together. The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, numbers 10, 11, and 12. Caught up on this. To this point in this series, the character of Normie Osborn was one that kind of wasn't hitting for me. A little 9-year-old son of a deceased Harry Osborn, who had been kind of played for comedy thus far, and I didn't really like, and kind of came off as over the top. And finally, they gave him some pathos here by revealing his backstory, and basically, it's that. He never knew his father. He never knew his grandfather because both were killed as a result of their Green Goblin activities. And the grief that his mother felt led her to basically neglect him throughout his entire childhood, and just set him on the path to becoming, this little brat of a kid that he is. And it's kind of cool to see him actually go on a little bit of a journey here in this one.
Is his mother in this Liz Allen?
He is. This is Basically, this is a continuation of if all of the 90s Spider-Man was never retconned.
Yep. Perfect. That's awesome. Because I was going to say, I remember little Normie when he was a baby when Harry died.
Yes.
In that issue. I vividly remember that.
Yeah. So something you might want to check out at some point. But yeah, well done kind of bringing that character's arc to a close. Green Lanterns 32, 33, and 34. Pretty good. Especially 32, which saw the departure of Sam Humphries. 33 and 34, written by Tim Seeley, are okay, but they have me a little concerned about what the overall quality of the title is going to be now that Humphries is no longer on board. Spider-Man, this is why it's going to get confusing. Spider-Man number 21 and Spider-Man number 234. Yes, those are consecutive issues in this series, thanks to the Marvel Legacy renumbering. Continue the story of Miles trying to find his place in the world and doubt himself somewhat. But the big reveal in the in number 234 of the return of a classic Ultimate Spider-Man character from several years back has me very excited to see how Ben's going to wrap up his run with the Ultimate Spider-Man / Miles Morales character. All-Star Batman 14 wrapped up the first Ally storyline. It was alright. This whole series, that's how I would describe it. The Ends of the Earth storyline was excellent, but the first story arc and the last story arc kind of left something to be desired, in my opinion. Kind of clear that Snyder was fixating most of his attention on metal at this point. The Spiders, Generations. This is the Generations one-shot that crossed over modern-day Miles with the 60s version of Peter Parker, like the young version of Peter Parker. It's kind of cool to see Peter running around in sweater vests and everyone calling each other geeks and nerds and wearing leather jackets and just doing all these old, Silver Agey things. Kind of neat to see how Miles reacts to that, even if the art I thought was not very good. Star Wars 37 and 38. This wraps up the Jason Aaron storyline or run on the title with another appearance from one of his original creations to the Star Wars mythos, the Scar Squadron of stormtroopers, a special elite force who are running throughout the universe seeking to hunt down the last remaining Jedi. It's a cool little nod. And then he kicks off his and then Kieran Gillen kicks off his Star Wars run with 38 with a return to the planet Jedha that was partially destroyed in Rogue One. So kind of see them picking up the pieces that were recently laid down on the film side. And then finally, the Journey to Star Wars The Last Jedi, Captain Phasma 4-part miniseries. Read all of it. Really enjoyed it, actually. Thought the art was good. Thought it fleshed out this somewhat one-dimensional character of Captain Phasma from Force Awakens. And just kind of was a nice appetizer for Last Jedi coming up here in a couple of weeks. And those are my readings.
Wow. It's a lot. A lot of material there. But with that being said, we have no time to waste. We're going to go right into watching. And while we didn't go into our breakdown of the shows like we usually do, we did give you our DC CW rankings. So, Nick, are you comfortable with us just moving on to last week's shows?
Yes.
Before we do that, let's hit up a double shot of The Walking Dead, though, because we didn't talk about that last time. So we have 2 episodes of The Walking Dead to discuss. The first was an episode in which we primarily pick up the pieces of the cliffhanger of Negan and Gabriel being locked in a trailer together. And although the episode is kind of sold as that, and that's kind of the linchpin of it, is Gabriel trying to get a confession from Negan. From not a confession as in confess, but a confession in terms of a priest with a parishioner, and he gets a confession from Negan about Negan saying that he couldn't wife down when she turned, and kind of whatever. But in addition, we get a look at Gregory and his machinations as he tries to worm his way into the good graces of the Saviors right before the incident that leads to him going back to the hilltop. Kind of a weird timeline on this episode, but picking up before a couple episodes prior, maybe they could have done a better job laying this out in the episode order. But nevertheless, we also get a very aggressive conflict between Rick and Daryl as they disagree on how to proceed with Rick's plan. As Rick sees fit to remind us in both episodes that we watched, the plan is solid. The plan is sound, Marge. Trust the plan. Don't question the plan. Plan, plan, plan. Every other word out of Rick's mouth in the episode is plan. So Rick has his plan and wants Daryl to stick to the plan. Daryl, presumably tired after being kidnapped, held captive, and tortured, and watching his friends get murdered before him, just wants to end this as quickly as possible. And so Daryl's going to go out, and he's going to do his thing and try to take out the saviors as best he can. But Rick says, no, that's not part of the plan. So Rick and Daryl actually have a brief fist fight. Eventually, they help each other up and to get out of the way of an explosion, and they go their separate ways to continue the much anticipated plan. Now,
you are always so critical of Rick and his plans.
His plans are stupid, first of all.
We don't know what this plan is yet. Maybe this is the one.
I'm tired of hearing about it.
Maybe this is the one.
Quit telling us. I know this is hard for Robert Kirkman to understand, but quit telling us that there is a plan and show us that there is a plan.
Maybe there is.
In fairness,
the plan is to wait. You gotta wait. You gotta be more patient. That's the problem. Daryl is just too impatient right now.
The problem, Nick, in previous episodes, they've done a good job of showing us the plan and giving us enough credit to think, hey, we can work out what they're doing here. And the last two episodes have literally been Rick talking about his stupid plan. Not in detail, but just saying, we got to stick to the plan. The plan will work. This is all part of the plan.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I will say that I actually enjoyed this episode. I thought it was pretty good. I liked for the most part the Gabriel and Negan stuff, even though I didn't think the whole confession thing was as thematically impactful or powerful as the writers probably thought it was when they were writing it. But other than that, I enjoyed getting to see this little. I like to get to see Daryl and Rick obviously having conflict and coming to blows, but then very quickly jumping back onto the same page. It seemed to me like a blood feud, it just seemed like tensions were high in the heat of the moment and all that. So,
it does raise a question that we brought up off air, which is that it feels like I 100% buy Daryl's character development and how what he went through last season could cause him to almost regress to use Wolverine terminology, to a feral state. To his old self. I still am not 100% sure why Rick has flip-flopped so many times on whether he wants to kill the Saviors or save the Saviors or what his stance on killing in general is. It feels like Rick off camera goes through a lot of character shifts at times.
I agree completely, and nobody can really get a good handle on that. It's something the writers don't really care to explain most of the time. So who knows? I mean, by the same token, as we'll discuss here in the next episode we're going to talk about, Carl's kind of going through the same thing. He's kind of been for the last several seasons kind of a mini Shane, this bloodthirsty kid who's always hyper aggressive, and now he's the one leaving canned goods for people at gas stations and walking off into the woods to talk to people about the goodness of being together and whatever other bullshit they had him doing with this other character that I instantly don't care about just because he's tied to Carl right now.
So in the second episode,
a lot of things, 6 different subplots, it seemed like.
Yeah, they bounce back and forth with, you've got Rick going to... And this is part of it, Nick. Part of his plan, apparently, is to try for the third time in the last season of television to negotiate with the trash people who have already turned on him twice before. Not once, but twice before. And shock of shocks, Nick, they turn on him again.
I think they may not have actually turned on him.
Tell me more.
I think so. That she put it in that storage bin, right?
Yeah.
And then she comes by and marks it with chalk later. Marks an A on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if maybe they have some sort of deal with the Saviors where they are now contributing to the Saviors, and she is going to deliver. Basically, the storage bin could perhaps be the Trojan horse that gets Rick inside the sanctuary.
Maybe that's part of the plan.
Otherwise, the lingering on the chalking of the A on the container makes no sense unless it's being marked for a specific purpose.
Right. I agree with that. But it just enough of the trash people, for God's sake.
Actually, Greg, we should be thankful though that it took this long into the season for them to pop up. Like,
that's true.
I was worried they were going to be a major focus of the season from the get-go, and they haven't been. Luckily, they haven't been, and the lesbians haven't been. Like, neither one of them have been, in the deal.
Meanwhile, there's a fun but ultimately pointless subplot of Michonne and Rosita.
Explain to me why Michonne needed to see the sanctuary.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
It made no sense to me. Like, she was basically there. She fulfilled her role in the plan. She knew that it worked. Like, they had been in communication. She had no real personal tie. I mean, like, yeah, she saw Abraham and Glenn beaten to death. So did everybody else. It wasn't like she was in love with Abraham the way Rosita was, or in love with Glenn the way Maggie was. They haven't really taken anything from Michonne so that she would have a deeply personal hatred for them. It just, the whole thing made no sense. Like, Rosita I got, and good to see her back, and she had probably the best moment in the episode, honestly.
Oh, yes.
But the Michonne subplot just made no sense to me in this one.
Agreed. On the other hand, on the good side of things, we get a great scene of Ezekiel as he is dealing with the ramifications of what we saw in the episode of the season at this point, a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
And we get a stunning scene from him and Carol, actually. And at this point, Melissa McBride has proven herself time and time again to be arguably the best actor on the entire show.
I don't know. Kari Payton kind of brought it this week.
Kari Payton brought it as well. Absolutely. And Morgan does as well when he's on there. But holy crap, is Melissa McBride amazing. And Kari Payton is amazing as well. And their scene was other than Rosita with a certain weapon, that was the highlight of the episode for me.
Agreed. Although Maggie throwing Gregory into the pin with the other saviors, that was
whimpering Gregory bumping his head against the post was so cathartic for me. I would actually watch an episode that was nothing but Gregory bumping his head into things and whining about it.
The end of this storyline, I don't know what it is in the comics. It has to be. I hope that Jesus' on ESC winds up getting him killed. Like, if it winds up getting anyone other than himself killed, it's a travesty.
It is, absolutely. He has become insufferable to me.
Yes, I agree.
And I hate to say that because I had nothing against him last season, but he's a character.
I am more bothered by like him suddenly becoming Batman than I am his moral, judgment on others. Like, because the writers just all of a sudden decided that he's the greatest hand-to-hand fighter the world has ever known, in addition to being overly judgmental of others.
Yes, and that long-haired douche is still alive with the Saviors. Why no one has killed him yet, I have no idea. You know the guy I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So, we didn't even talk about your favorite part, Nick, of the previous episode, Eugene Porter.
Dr. Eugene Porter. Thank you very much. Yeah, I am actually really intrigued to see what he's going to do. It's clear now that he knows about Dwight's treachery, and I'm interested to see whether he turned in or not. It's gonna be very, very interesting. This could potentially be the path back to redemption for Dr. Eugene Porter.
Not that you think he needs it, right?
He doesn't need it. These people appreciate his talents in ways that Rick and the Alexandrians never did.
They appreciate his talents in ways some consider to be unnatural.
They know he's the idea man. He figures things out, Greg. He is a problem solver.
Is he though?
He is.
We'll see. We'll see if he can solve these problems. But nevertheless, 2 episodes that, while they had some good stuff in them, and I rather liked the previous episode, They do feel a little bit like the spinning of the wheels, a little bit of a slow in the forward momentum.
Not feel like the all-out war is actually just one long battle and not an actual war? Like, this is all taking place over the course of one day. That's not a war. That's a battle. So, like, it just feels... I don't know. The conflict feels very small to me still, and that's a little frustrating.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's kind of over the place. And I thought they've done a great job this season of making it feel like there's a lot of different moving parts, and that's been fun. But I think the last couple weeks, even though I've liked the episodes, particularly last week I liked, and this week I thought was okay, they do feel like, at times, that whole Michonne subplot, it just felt like it ultimately served no purpose. And I'm like, let's get it rolling here a little bit. And I think they will. I've enjoyed the season, and I think that they, I say that even though I really didn't like the premiere, but I have enjoyed everything since then, and I think there's enough going on here I like to be good. So,
okay.
Let's move on to the CW shows from last week. Supergirl was a pretty eventful episode. And it involved the return of a major character named Mon-El, who was a Supergirl's love interest last season, and one of our favorite parts of the show, maybe our favorite part of the show last season.
Yeah, he gets there.
And he returns in this episode, but things are different. He's bearded now. He has a mysterious spaceship from the future. And we get tons of teases and introductions of the Legion of Superheroes.
Including the introduction of Saturn Girl, correct?
I think so. And he is currently engaged, or married, much to Supergirl's chagrin. We also get the continued development of Samantha and her transition into Reign as she finally finds out that she is an alien creature, basically, that she arrived on Earth in a rocket ship and was raised by a mother who...
And that's the one aspect of this episode that actually didn't work for me, was the stuff. Yeah. I was digging it up until she got to her own little fortress of solitude or whatever.
I agree. Yes.
And then they went with the lazy way of, like, getting to the Reign character that I don't know, man.
I agree with that. I thought you were going to say the stuff with her and her estranged
mother. That was great.
I loved that because to me, I've always been fascinated by the concept of Superman, the importance of the Kents.
Right.
What if Superman was raised by someone who really didn't love their children that much,
Right.
Or someone whose motivations weren't as altruistic as the kindly couple, you know?
I agree completely, but then once it got to her little desert fortress of Fortress 2, that's when it became frustrating.
I would go so far as to say this, Nick. To that point, this had probably been my favorite episode of the season. That's how much I loved it. I loved everything about this episode.
Hey, what about the underrated, the very small subplot of John and his dad going out and bonding and stuff?
That's exactly it, Nick. I was going to point that out. I'm so glad you did, because that was amazing. That actor, Carl Lumbly, or whatever his name is, I think it's his name, Carl Lumbly, that voiced Martian Manhunter on Justice League, he's a revelation, is he not?
He's very good. He's great.
His stuff with John, who is obviously a great actor we've seen to this point, is just mind-blowingly good. And I thought everything was so good. The acting was so good in this episode. Again, the last minute was so over the top, I didn't like it. But everything before that was tremendous.
I agree completely.
So Tuesday night brought us an episode we've kind of been looking forward to for quite a while on The Flash. And that is a deep delve into the character of the Thinker, oh gosh, what's his name? DeVoe, Clifford DeVoe.
Yeah,
Clifford DeVoe, the Thinker. The Flash.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was awesome. The Flash has done episodes like this before with other characters, and they're always good.
Yeah.
This is pretty much all about him and about Barry for once being in a position where nobody believes him.
Right.
I'm sorry, that was the previous episode, and now in this episode, or was that in this episode? I can't remember.
Same. Yeah,
same episode.
They combine the origin with the flash back and forth to kind of reveal how he's playing all along, and then showing you how he came to be.
Barry in the rare position of being the cynical one, not trusting DeVoe and just knowing that there's more going on here, and could not have cast a creepier person to play DeVoe.
No, he's great.
As my mom put it, even before his transformation, he was creepy. So, and he was, and yet he's not a mustache twirling villain.
Yeah, we still don't really know what exactly it is that he wants yet, and that's very interesting to me.
He originally sets out to want to help humanity, but in the process dooms himself to this crippling illness and ALS, an advanced form of ALS, and just nails every scene. Especially, I wanted to point out the scene where Barry visits him in his classroom, and they finally lay all the cards on the table. Yes. I thought that was wonderful.
It really was. It was outstanding. Especially that line that they had dropped in the trailer that sounded cheesy in the trailer, but actually worked in the context of the episode. I'll be thinking of you. That was good stuff, man.
Very good. I'm so happy we've got the Thinker, not a speed villain this year, and not the Stinker.
Not the Stinker. Yeah,
exactly. There were only two choices: the Thinker and the Stinker. So Legends of Tomorrow. Let's move on to Legends.
Yeah.
That was an episode that took place in the Vietnam War, I believe, if I remember correctly, and saw the return of Gorilla Grodd to the Arrowverse. In addition, it saw the introduction of Heatwave, Mick Rory's dad, the Vietnam War.
It sure.
Which, when you say the words Mick Rory's dad, it implies that we should probably love this episode because Mick is, if not each of our favorite character on the show, in our
he's
top
up there.
Characters on the show. And overall, there were good things in this episode. Grodd was good. I always like to see Grodd show up.
And I thought this was probably the best job of Grodd CGI they've done thus far. I think they've finally refined that a little bit, so that was good.
Did a good job on that. I enjoyed the...
But man, the entire Vietnam subplot was just uninteresting.
Oh, God, it was.
Like, a rare clunker for Legends from a plot standpoint.
Yeah, and the guy that played Mick's dad...
I get what they were going for. I get it. I've done that with, like, every time any of these characters interact with, like, parents or grandparents or past versions of themselves and stuff where they try to mimic the speech patterns and stuff, but this one was just, I don't know, something about it. The whole subplot wasn't even
good. I think a lot of times you see like the actor themselves is playing the prior ancestor of them or whatever.
Right.
And in this case, it's different. You got a different actor, and he's trying so hard to sound like that Mick voice.
Right.
That it and don't get me wrong, Legends pulls off corny.
Right.
They really do, but they didn't in this case.
They didn't.
And I hated the Lyndon Johnson guy.
Oh, the Lyndon Johnson guy was awful.
I thought he was brutal.
Even the subplot they gave, like Mick's dad, just wasn't like none of the subplots in this one were very interesting, and so it's just like I said, a rare misfire for Legends of Tomorrow.
I still enjoyed it, and I did like seeing a little bit further humanization of Mick.
Yeah. I liked it okay.
You know,
I mean, but it wasn't up to par to the Legends standard. You know?
Yeah, up to par. On to Thursday night and Arrow, and I watched this as it aired live on Thanksgiving with my mom. First time I've ever gotten to watch Arrow live with her, and I honestly am struggling to remember because I watched the crossovers this week, and a hard time remembering what happened on Arrow.
So this is where you have Caden James takes, attacks the city because Oliver has been arrested for.
That's right.
Being the Green Arrow. So it's a. And
I actually missed the first 10 minutes of this episode because we had a pet emergency.
Oh, that's right.
And we made it back and missed the first 10 minutes of it. But what I saw was excellent.
The bitchy FBI agent arrests Oliver in front of his freaking kid.
I hate her. I hate her
so much
on multiple levels.
Not just because of the actions her character is taking. I hate the way the actress is playing her. I hate the way she is being written. Like she is being written by the stereotypical strong, independent black woman who don't need no damn man. But yet she's written by a bunch of white guys who have no idea what that actually looks like. It is awful. It is one of the worst characters Arrow's ever had, in my opinion.
She's horrible. She needs to go away, and she has go away heat with me.
X-Pac.
Exactly. Nothing like Prometheus heat.
No.
Not good. And it's unfortunate because her stuff aside, and she's really not in the episode that much, they're going to have, at this point, Nick, they're going to have to reveal that she's working for a villain, right?
I don't know, I guess, but like...
Because there's no way they can redeem her.
My question is, how many times are we going to do this Oliver is arrested for being the Green Arrow and then clears himself thing?
Yeah, I'm convinced, Nick, that this whole season is leading up to him going public.
Right, but then if he clears himself again, or are they planning on stretching out this trial the rest of the season?
I think the trial is going to be a kind of seminal moment, and I think it's going to be a situation where Oliver, for whatever reason, is going to have to make the choice to go public with his identity, and I think it's going to be a really good moment when it happens, but she is just so bad.
Yep.
And I got to be honest, I think the actress is really bad.
Yeah, that's what I said. The actress is bad. The writing is bad. Just everything about that character is bad.
Maybe she's good in other stuff, but she's not good in this.
Yeah,
but that being said, all of stuff with Oliver and Diggle was amazing.
Right, I agree. It was great. Ollie and Diggle, getting to see Ollie back in the hood for the first time in a while. More interactions with Ollie and William. Just everything about this episode, other than the FBI agent and other than
action scenes.
I'm still a little iffy on Caden James, but the rest of it was awesome.
Great action scenes. The Diggle is just the scene with him and Oliver at the end when Ollie tells him that he still wants him to be Green Arrow when all this is over was great. The only thing about that worries me, Nick, is now I'm really worried that Diggle's not going to make it through the season.
Yep, that concerns me as well.
But overall, really, really enjoyed it. So let's get to our weekly rankings. Yes. I'll go first, Nick, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
I'll go 1 to 4 as usual. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go Flash at 1. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go Supergirl at 2. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go Arrow at 3 in a rare situation, and Legends at 4. This is a very unusual ranking for me from my usual weeks, but I really thought, Supergirl was my number 1 until that last minute of the show, but Flash was awesome, and I think Arrow was really, really good too, and I think, like you, I kind of think Legends was a little bit of a step down this week.
Yeah. I'm going to go Flash, Supergirl, Legends, with really the top 3 all being very close by like the most razor thin of margins, and just that last minute of Supergirl, like you said, is just, that's kind of the separating factor for me.
Yep, you got to keep them separated. But yes, so excited to see where things are going with Diggle, all the rest of the characters in the Arrowverse. So there you have it, folks. That wraps things up. We've gone a little long tonight, I know, but we had a lot to say about Thor. We had a lot to say about the DC Extended Universe. We had a lot to say about Marvel and Infinity War. But as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you liked on the show, didn't like. Let us know your thoughts on these news items we talked about, your DC CW rankings. Let us know about Walking Dead, what your thoughts are on this season. I know it's a little bit divisive right now. We will read your feedback and talk about it on the show. So until then, what do we have coming up? Are we going back to being for hire next week, Nick?
We are, with Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. One I haven't rewatched in full, other than, television versions and whatnot, in a while, and I'm looking forward to going back to that world. So that one should be fun. And then the next week, we have something of an experimental podcast that we'll talk more about at a later date. We'll see how that goes, if it ever hears the light of day at all.
Right, and if not, we'll come up with something else.
Yes.
So, all right, folks. Well, you have a wonderful week. Go out and read some comics, watch some comic book related media, and most importantly, look up the history of Ho Ho Loon.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys. Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys.